Arizona State University today. Learn more about the W.P. Carey Business Graduate Programs online. Text DRIVE to 79645. That's DRIVE to 79645.
Powerful, effective,
proven,
tough,
consistent,
reliable.
A lot of adjectives can describe a herbicide's weed control, but one only applies to Liberty herbicide. Superior. Liberty herbicide has no known resistance in row crops, more convenient application flexibility, and excellent control of key weeds. All backed by the Liberty Weed Control Guarantee. Learn more at liberty.basf.com. Grow smart with BASF. Always read and follow label directions.
Michael Devine at AM 1400.
In the name of justice and the American way of life.
With 60 rounds of freedom.
All right, this is AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. I'm Michael Devine. We are going to tell the truth, make it matter. We're never going to be boring. Our guest here today, once again, from the First Presbyterian Church, is Pastor Austin Hill. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day, a little colder than I like for this time of year, but, I'm from Iowa. I automatically critique any weather observation that anyone has.
That's when you know you're truly an Iowan.
That's right. Whenever anybody says anything about the weather, you offer your 2 cents, pro, con, we can never just say, yep, it's good. No, we got to get in there. But, that's the way it's going to be. So the Supreme Court in Iowa, and I'm taking this from what happened out at Eggs and Issues. I didn't go to Eggs and Issues because I thought, I wasn't that impressed with the session. There was mainly routine business, nothing for anybody to get worked up about. Of course, there's always a handful of people who are going to get worked up over anything.
Yeah,
and they showed up at Eggs and Issues again.
You got to make sure people are paying attention.
I'm trying to bring up the fact that the Iowa Supreme Court decided that we needed to pay for transgender surgery. Now, the legislative body, and this was signed by Governor Reynolds, pushed back on that.
Okay.
No, we're not going to take tax dollars for transgender surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue has become, and I don't know if there's a Christian perspective on this exactly or not. Not trying to get into any transgender bashing necessarily. I can take off on the shameless liberal propaganda surrounding almost anything. And that's the whole idea. We should be somehow ashamed of the fact that we don't celebrate transgender lives or the lives of this guy over here who likes to sleep with vacuum cleaners or whatever is a little tiresome. And I hope that runs out of steam. But once again, there's a lot of indignation that we should be paying for transgender surgery. And I have made the observation, look, here in Iowa, we're a tolerant group. I mean, our faith and our culture, our Christian faith, tells us to be tolerant. And as far as I'm concerned, a person can be transgender. I think it's a little freaky, but, they can live their lives as they wish.
You're not going to legislate against that. Or
No.
Yeah.
We're not going to outlaw being transgender. However, I do not believe anyone has a right to come to me or you or anyone in the state and say, hand over your money because I've got to transition here. I've got to get my pee-pee whacked or whatever it is. I don't, how the Supreme Court came up with that, I have no idea. I think it was another one of those things where they just wanted to shove it in the face of ordinary people. And of course, there's a lot of indignation around that we as a people are not surrendering part of our money for this sort of surgery, which, by the way, is an elective surgery. And once again, it's emotional blackmail. Well, studies have shown that if transgender people aren't allowed to have surgery, they'll kill themselves. I mean, is that an argument? You're showing up. A transgender person is showing up literally with a gun pointed to their head and saying, if I shoot, it's your fault.
That would be pretty crazy.
That would be a little crazy, but I guess I would ask for your take as a minister of Christ.
Sure. Well, I think as you have mentioned, there are multiple different factors at play here, not just what the Supreme Court is deciding that taxpayers would contribute into, but how do we legally deal with people who are transgender or are transitioning, and then also just how do we morally treat people? I mean, those are all kind of interrelated. And I guess I would ask to clarify a little bit. Now, I don't know the policy well enough, but are other elective surgeries that these people who are on taxpayer dollars that are salaried, do they have other elective surgeries that are already covered in their insurance? Because I mean, you just have to start with that. I mean, elective surgery in general, I don't know. If they want to go and maybe get some kind of plastic surgery or something like that, is that available? I mean, are we already paying those things as taxpayers? And I don't know if you know the answer to that one or not.
The answer. I'm sorry. The answer to what?
So, are there other elective surgeries that are covered that we as taxpayers would be paying?
I don't know if there are elective surgeries that are covered by Medicaid. I doubt it.
Okay.
Elective is usually where insurance companies draw the line.
Yeah.
And I would hope that that's where Medicaid and Medicare dollars.
So you can't get
otherwise we'll be paying for breast enlargement.
I was just going to say, so we're not going to, on taxpayer dollars, we're not doing breast enhancement.
I'm ready for a hair transplant myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
but I don't expect anybody to pay for it, just so
certainly.
I can feel better about myself.
Well, yeah. So I mean, I think that's a helpful place to start with talking about this, because there are elective surgeries that can probably have a significant change on that person's mental state, right? There would be a lot of elective surgeries that might ultimately benefit someone, but at least we currently are saying we will not use dollars that are contributed through Social Security to pay for those things. So I think we've already established a precedent there, first and foremost, that I think the argument that would be made is that, well, people who are transgender, this is more of a need, because they are at some kind of psychological risk if they don't go through this transition kind of surgery. And that's where, I'm not a medical expert. I'm not a psychologist. And I do think there are some instances, I mean, this is a fraction of a percent, but where occasionally you have people who are born where it's not clear what gender they are. Something is mixed up in their genitalia, or maybe they maybe they have a Y chromosome, but then their genitalia are more female. But I mean, that's like
there is no scientific proof of anything that indicates a chromosome or anything like that. This is a result of the work of sociologists and psychologists. And to be fair, it's a very inexact science, both of those things. It's a social science, and it's inexact. And it's being presented to us like this is fact.
Well, that's where, the distinction I'm trying to make is in the rare instance where there's some physiological ambiguity, I guess I can say. And there's some kind of surgery that is done to provide clarity for this person, maybe to make them more definitively male or female. Sure, I think that is a necessity. Now, it gets, where it becomes more of a spectrum, as people might say, is that, well, I am biologically male, but I feel like I'm female. That's where I think then you're purely in this elective realm. And no, I don't think we should be paying for that. I go back to the way that God has created us, and we were fearfully and wonderfully made. I don't think God makes junk. I don't think God makes people the wrong way, even if we maybe feel that we're a different way.
Yeah, really.
So I don't think we should compel with dollars taxpayers who are paying into Social Security. I don't think those dollars should go to pay for gender reassignment surgeries, unless it is the rare case of some kind of physiological ambiguity, where the actual body needs some kind of biological correction. Then fine, I get that. But that is such a minute case out of all of the transgender cases that, to make your whole argument based on that is pretty absurd, because by and large, it's people who biologically are, perfectly fine, but have some kind of psychological need to change. And in that instance, I don't think we need to or should be encouraging biological changes. Now, at the same time, if someone has undergone some surgery or process like that, I think we should provide care for them. Now, I mean, take for example, say somebody, this is all hypothetical, say somebody transitions and they were born biologically female, they transition, now they're biologically male. And then they lose their job, after all that's happened, and now they're on Medicare or Medicaid. I always get those mixed up, whichever the one is. And they need medication or hormone treatment or something along those lines. I would think we should pay for them. We're not paying for that surgery, but we're paying for the ongoing medical care that person needs.
Now, you think that because of what? Something you find in Christian theology?
Well, I think we are called to care for those who are in need. And no, we aren't paying for that gender reassignment that happened whenever that happened. Maybe that was done when the person was of means, but maybe as a result of that, they have ongoing medical needs that go with that they don't have a choice. You can't say, oh, just tough it up. After a surgery has been done,
you got cancer, tough it up.
Yeah, so I guess that's where I guess I'm saying, if someone is in need, we don't have to provide them with so much means that they can just choose whatever they want. But if someone had made a choice while they were of means, and then they become financially distressed, and they become a part of our system of Social Security and help, I think we should offer the help regardless of past choices they've made. So that's, I guess, a little bit of a distinction. I would say we should offer care for people who need it, but if it's elective, then I don't think we need to.
I don't think we need to, and I don't think that we should be beat over the head with a cudgel of shame. All these things are shame-based politics, really. I tell you, it's part of an overall plan to drive Christianity from the public square. And it's been going on for a long time, and it's been largely successful. Businesses, unfortunately, have been coerced, actually, by liberals. Liberals will say, adopt our position, or we'll picket your business. They're calling you a racist and a bigot over nothing. And then they want to run around and say, well, business is on our side.
Yeah. Well, and I guess an observation I've made that I'm going to make right now, and it might demonstrate a little bit of my ignorance, but I'm going to make the observation anyway, just because I want to be authentic on the air.
Be authentic.
There's so much discussion in our society that we lump the whole LGBTQ community together, right? It's LGBTQ.
I wasn't trying to do that in this particular instance.
Well, but we often, they're all joined together. And people who are gay or lesbian or bisexual, we're told that that's not a choice. We're told that that's something biological and inherited.
But then they offer very inconclusive proof.
Well,
now,
yeah.
Think about what I just said there. Inconclusive proof. There's proof, and then we have to say this is inconclusive.
Well, I'm like, let's just for the sake of argument, let's give the benefit of the doubt and say sure, okay. So there's no choice. It's purely.
By the way, I do believe that, but every time I hear that this is in the genes, I'll say, well, bring your research here. Well, studies indicate this and that. And
yeah, well, and I think
can't do it.
Well, it's just like any part of human behavior. It's some strange combination of our biology and our upbringing. I mean,
that's right.
Why is that guy as smart as he is? Is it his genes, or is it because of all of his reading that he did while growing up? Well, maybe it's both. So I think it gets more complicated. But, we hear it's not a choice. It's not a choice. It's not a choice. Yet then when it comes to transgender, so our gender apparently is a choice. So now I'm a little confused, because if our sexual orientation is not a choice, how is it that our gender is a choice?
I don't get that.
and to me, that seems like just a blatant contradiction. If our gender is fluid, then why can't our sexual orientation be fluid? And if we're told that our sexual orientation isn't fluid, then why do we think that our gender is somehow fluid?
I don't get it either. I don't look at me for an explanation of that. I think it's all weird, and just something that upper middle class elites do because they know it annoys everybody else. This is about power more than anything else.
Well,
this isn't about what's right or wrong. It's just that we have we have the power to do it. We're going to show you the fist, and you're going to think our way, and you're going to pay things our way and play it our way.
Well, and I
or
think,
there's
I
going
mean,
to be trouble.
I mean, everyone does that to an extent.
Liberals are thugs, I'll tell you.
Well, and I mean, I've met thugs on the right as well. I think there are thugs
on
the
right.
Yeah, I think there are thugs on the left and on the right.
Some would say I'm over there on the right being a thug.
So I guess
I don't mind being a thug.
Well, I mean, I would like to help people on the left and the right be a little bit less thuggish. And I think often on some of these things, the truth is probably somewhere in between, not directly in the middle, but between these extremes. I think the challenge with the transgender conversation is how do you uphold standards while also still being loving to people in a certain community? And so someone who's undergone some gender reassignment surgery, I don't know if they can reassign again. I don't know if there's any going back from a surgery that's been performed like that. So while I would not advocate for someone to go through a surgery like that, for someone who has gone through a surgery like that, I still have to figure out how to love that person. And I still have to figure out how to help them thrive and have well-being in their lives. So I think that's a little bit of the challenge is how do you say, no, I don't think, for example, we should be using tax dollars to pay for these elective surgeries. However, at the same time, we still need to be loving to people who are part of that constituent.
The Grinberg position. All right. I think you're right, though. I'm a traditionalist. We do have to hate the sin and love the sinner.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's one of the wonderful things I have found about Christianity, frankly, is that no matter what, we can condemn behavior as an offense to God, but we cannot turn away the sinner ever.
Yeah. And to clarify, every one of us is a sinner. So
yes, and that's the other half. I can be very outspoken, obviously, but I don't forget that we all are sinners at a certain level.
So I think that idea of hate the sin, love the sinner, I mean, that's for all of us. And, even ourselves, recognizing our own tendency towards sin. And so, I think that's where a little bit of the challenge is, and especially in our society where so much, everything is identity based right now. Are you in or are you out? Are you on my team or are you on their team? Are you part of us or are you part of them? And we so quickly want to label or categorize things. And I'm guilty of that too. Just a quick example, I listen to a fair amount of podcasts, and so does my wife. And we all have buzzwords that we can identify, that help us figure out if someone's in or out.
Right.
And I'll be honest, sometimes my wife will listen to a podcast and I'll hear one of those buzzwords from kind of the other side. And I'm thinking, what on earth is my wife listening to? And, I instantly get judgmental and defensive. But if I'm listening to something where I know the context and the background of the person sharing, I can let that person challenge me and even say some of those buzzwords. And I'm okay with it because, I know where that person's coming from. And it just demonstrates even in my own life how easily, if all I hear, without the context of relationship, if I just hear those certain words or those phrases, I instantly just want to write someone off. That is just a default for all of us. And I think the challenge with any of these issues is how do we meet the person where they are and not make it about, the issue or whatever else. Sure, you can talk about the behavior, but how do you meet that person where they are first and foremost? Because if we're not able to do that, it doesn't matter what I think about that person's behavior or about, lifestyle or anything else. If we're not engaged in meaningful conversations and relationships with people, my opinion about, choices they're making is irrelevant to that person.
Well, you're absolutely right, of course. But man, we're in an age of tribalism, and Christianity is identified by liberals as a social ill, as the source of bigotry and prejudice and the oppression of women and all sorts of things. And we have political figures like Cory Booker yelling that everyone should go get in those people's faces. Those people, go get in their faces. And we, here in Fort Dodge, some character walks over to Steve King and throws a full glass of water in his face. I guess it was very violent. It was a violent assault. It was a big glass of water and in ice water, and he threw it with some force right in the U.S. congressman's face.
Yeah.
Just because I think he said he didn't like bigots or he didn't like something, but that's not the way you treat people.
Yeah, exactly.
I hope the guy goes to jail, frankly.
Well, and I think we then become the very people that we're speaking out against.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's exactly correct. I mean, out in Portland, Oregon, the mayor out there is kind of a weak mayor. Mayor Wheeler, he's allowed his city to get completely out of hand. There's pitched battles in the streets between Antifa, which are a radical left group, and a consortium of right-wing, very conservative groups, the Proud Boys and some others. I mean, they've taken over city blocks in the city of Portland. And by the way, Portland's a beautiful city, and they fight it out in the middle of the street and in the middle of intersections with clubs and all sorts of things. And they're running brawls all the time. Yeah. And somehow the police are mainly instructed to stand down or be peacemakers of some kind. Yeah. I don't think police or social workers are peacemakers. I think they're there to enforce the law. That's the new attitude is that they should come up and to some violence and try to diffuse the situation.
Well, it's a hard thing. It requires a multi-pronged approach because many of the people are where they are.
And just show up with guns a-blazing. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Our guest is Pastor Austin Hill with the First Presbyterian Church. We'll be back.
Divine Intervention is online at yourfortdodge.com, on Twitter at JMike1400.
It's 2:32. The news is next.
Hi, I'm Amber. I'm a mom of two, and I live with HIV. When I first received my diagnosis, I was really worried about how I was going to provide for my kids because I knew taking control of my diagnosis was going to be expensive. So I started looking for any resources that could help us out, and I found out I was eligible for Ryan White services through the Iowa Department of Public Health. I qualified for medication and medical care, financial help, transportation, housing, and even counseling. I'm amazed by how much support is available, and I wish I had talked to someone sooner, especially now that I know I'm not alone. Over 3,000 Iowans are living with HIV. How we take care of ourselves and how we manage our care are two of the most important ways we can live our best lives. I'm living with HIV, not dying from it. Why wait? Reach out for testing and care services at StopHIVIowa.org.
Your news, your town, your station. KVFD News when it breaks.
Good afternoon. I'm Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. 3 people were killed, including 2 children, in a crash on Interstate 80 just west of Coralville on Sunday afternoon. Radio Iowa's Matt Kelly reports.
The State Patrol says an SUV was trying to make an illegal U-turn and had slowed in the right lane of the interstate. As the SUV approached the crossover in the median, it pulled into the left lane, directly into the path of the oncoming semi. Troopers say the truck broadsided the SUV and sent it into the median. Reports say 5 people were in the SUV and 3 of them died, including children ages 11 and 13. Another child and adult survived. They're hospitalized in Iowa City. No names or conditions are being released. Radio Iowa, I'm Matt Kelly.
Iowa's joining 29 states in creating some basic rules of the road for vehicles without a human behind the wheel. Representative Ashley Hinson of Marion says although it may be years before driverless or fully autonomous vehicles are in use, it's time to start planning.
The wheels of technology are turning fast, moving forward, and vehicle safety is definitely in question for the future. And this bill speaks to many of those things.
The new law will require driverless cars and trucks to carry liability insurance. The manufacturer must certify that all applicable federal safety standards have been met on the vehicle unless an exception has been granted. Hinson predicts lawmakers will have to address other issues surrounding driverless vehicles.
We're going to have to talk about lane striping, work zones, data sharing practices, education and outreach, because let's face it, there is a lot of that needs to happen before these vehicles end up on the road. And I would also anticipate that there will be some further conversations about liability as these vehicles come to fruition.
The new law, which goes into effect July 1st, specifies that driverless buses will be authorized when the technology is ready for the public streets and roads. The governor approved the new law last Friday. Police have arrested a Polk County jail inmate who escaped by using another inmate's identification bracelet. Des Moines police arrested 27-year-old Rodney Clint Moore on Sunday morning in Des Moines, days after he had swapped bracelets with another inmate and been released from the jail about 1:45 a.m. on Friday. Polk County Sheriff's Office detectives learned where Moore was staying and police arrested him without incident. He was returned to the jail where he had been held since April 24th on charges of reckless driving and driving while barred. Moore used the bracelet of 25-year-old inmate Zachary Arthur Titus, who had been charged with escape for allegedly helping Moore leave the jail. Titus was serving a 45-day sentence for probation violation and was set to be released. I'm Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. Have a great day.
This is AM 1400, KVFD, the voice for Dodge. It's 2:36. First of all, in the weather forecast, we got to get away from this rain, but here it is again. There is a chance of rain the rest of the afternoon, mostly cloudy today with a high of 60 overnight. We will have rain, mostly cloudy with a low of 43. Tomorrow, again, rain, sunny with a high of 61. Wednesday, showers, thunderstorms. I'm tired of this. Thursday, again, a chance of rain. Friday, sunny with a high of 63. Saturday, sunny with a high of 65. Sunday, back to a chance of rain, mostly sunny with a high of 66. Right now, 61 degrees at AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. That'll probably be the day's high. Obituaries this hour brought to you by Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services at 1615 North 15th Street, Fort Dodge. You may contact Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services by calling 515-576-7128 or online at www.gundersonfuneralhome.com. Kenny Rash has died. Kenny died last week. And again, if I had to read his life resume, I'd be reading here for several minutes. He had a long and good life. He was very involved, and he touched the lives of many, many people. Kenny was buried last week. Obituaries this hour brought to you by Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services at 1615 North 15th Street, Fort Dodge. You may contact Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services by calling 515-576-7128 or online at www.gundersonfuneralhome.com. Pastor Austin Hill of the First Presbyterian Church is in our studio. We'll be back with Pastor Hill in a few minutes. 2:37, 61 degrees at AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. With a look at the closing market report, here's Dwayne Murley.
Here's a look at how the markets closed today. May corn down 7 1/4 to 355 3/4. July down 6 1/2 to 364 1/4. September down 6 to 371 3/4. And December corn down 5 1/2 to 382 1/4. May soybeans down 12 at 817 1/2. July down 12 cents at 830 1/4. August down 12 1/4 to 836 1/2. November down 11 3/4 to 853. May wheat closed unchanged at 428. Soybean meal down 180 a ton at 291.80. June live cattle down 115 at 112.27. August down 75 to 108.40. May feeder cattle down 112 to 136.02. August down 202 to 144.35. May lean hogs closed down 297 to 82.37. June down the $3 limit to close at 89.75. From the farm desk, I'm Dwayne Murley.
Wild Rose Casino and Resort Jefferson welcomes Foghat. Foghat rocks Wild Rose Friday, June 14th. Tickets on sale now at the Iowa store and online at wildroseresorts.com. I just want to make Don't miss Foghat. Friday, June 14th at Wild Rose Casino and Resort, Jefferson. You'd rather be here.
If you own a pair of Skechers, this ad is not for you because you already know they're the most comfortable shoes on the planet. This ad is for those who have never tried Skechers, for the few who have never experienced the otherworldly comfort of Skechers air-cooled memory foam, never floated across the ground on comfort pods, or experienced Skechers seamless knits. You're missing out. That's like never petting a puppy. So we've made this ad for you. Skechers, live comfortably. Available at a Skechers store near you or wherever stylish shoes are sold.
Thrifty White Community Health Corner. May is Stroke Awareness Month. Do you know the signs? Stroke symptoms strike quickly. Look for sudden confusion, trouble speaking, seeing, walking, severe headache, or weakness on one side of the body. A stroke is a medical emergency, so seek help immediately. You can reduce your risk of a stroke by exercising and eating right, and if you smoke, quit. Your local Thrifty White pharmacist is here to help you learn more.
Michael Devine at AM 1400
In the name of justice and the American way of life.
with 60 rounds of freedom.
Yes, that's right. 60 rounds of freedom at all times. AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Ward Dodge. Our guest is Pastor Austin Hill, the First Presbyterian Church. Pastor Hill and I tried to have a conversation about being Christian and Christianity in the 21st century, and really how to be a Christian in a world that is decidedly anti-Christian. And I will point to this, Pastor Hill. In 2013, the Iowa Supreme Court ordered the state to treat children of lesbian couples as having two parents. In other words, same-sex parents were listed as the parents on a birth certificate, as if this were possible. In the past, we dealt in reality. If there were two parents, we had to have one of both sexes. That's the only way.
Biologically.
But we have chosen to lie to ourselves in the interests of blind propaganda. Now, in this decision, this is an Associate Justice of the Iowa Supreme Court, David Wiggins, and this is what he wrote. By naming the non-birthing spouse, that's an interesting name.
Yeah.
Non-birthing spouse on the birth certificate of a married lesbian couple's child, the child is ensured support from that parent, and the parent establishes fundamental legal rights at the moment of birth. Therefore, and here's the key line, therefore, the only explanation for not listing the non-birthing lesbian spouse on the birth certificate is stereotype or prejudiced. Now, many believe, this is a Supreme Court justice.
Okay.
This is somebody that the cultural left went all out to save a few years ago during a retention election. And by the way, they got it done. But this isn't reasoning. This is a sociological perspective.
Yeah.
This is not the law. This is utter nonsense. And this is a man who holds a very high position in our world. Now, I'm not just trying to generate some outrage here. Christianity has been given the credit or the concern for creating identity. Christian men once were held with high esteem in our society, and the hierarchical nature of the Christian view of marriage has been blamed for all kinds of things. Never mind that hierarchical nature of Christian marriage is responsible for the advance of Western civilization and the most affluent, prosperous, and strong country ever conceived. It's just a bad thing, bad. And of course, according to a chief justice of, not a chief justice, but associate justice of our Supreme Court, that's exactly the deal. We're just full of stereotypes and prejudice. And we have to stop thinking in terms of having a biological birth, but a bundle of rights around a birth. I mean, it can't happen, I guess, by adoption. We have to lie to ourselves and essentially falsify a birth certificate in the name of gender equality.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot going on in what you've mentioned there. I think, first of all, when we look at the hierarchy in families and the position of leadership of the male, I think we are in a time where the biological differences on a whole between a man and a woman don't matter as much as they had for all the history of the world before. What I mean is, up until 150 years ago, the husband really was the breadwinner because they were the one who would do the physical labor required to provide for their family.
Sure.
Build the home by hand, do the farming needed, do the hunting or whatever it was. And really only in the last, 150, 200 years that on the whole society, have we had more flexibility in that where the woman had the ability, because you can earn income without having those physical kinds of things. You can earn income intellectually.
Sure.
So those things have changed the way that we approach families. It's just unavoidable. The last couple hundred years have really changed the way we view that. And
well, how does Christianity see marriage? How does Christianity see the roles of men and women?
So there's no monolithic answer to that. And within Christianity,
I was a little surprised that there was supposedly some plot by Christians to oppress people.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't call it that. Now, some people would look at it as this sinister, Christians have tried to put women in their place.
That is it. And a lot of people believe that.
I think most often it's people who look at parts of the Bible and want to follow what they say. So, for example,
yes, thank you very much.
The Apostle Paul talks about this established order from men to women to children to slaves. And actually, God to men, to women, to children, to slaves.
And here comes Justice Wiggins telling us we're all full of it. We're all full of it.
So I mean, there are a lot of steps to
Paul
get
is
to
a moron. The Apostle Paul doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well, but the issue is that Paul is writing in a particular time.
Okay, let's follow up on that. Is the Bible, admittedly, was not written here just in the last decade. Is the Bible outdated? Does it have outdated social mores, gender roles? What are you saying?
Well, yes and no, actually. So
you feel very strongly both ways?
Yeah. So let me parse that out. So the Apostle Paul says things like men shouldn't have long hair, or women.
The Apostle Paul said that?
Yeah, that's New Testament. Or he says that. So not only should men not have long hair, but women shouldn't have short hair. Or women shouldn't adorn themselves with jewelry. He says that women should cover their heads in worship. And so for a number of years, for centuries, I mean, a lot of why we've done what we did were because of those comments that Paul made. But you or I today, some of that we have no problem with. I mean, sure, you might tell your son to go get a haircut, but you don't think your son's sinning if his hair is at a certain length. You don't think he's, disregarding the natural order as described in Scripture.
No, you never met my dad, did you?
Well, but
he was from another generation.
Exactly. So that
my son got his hair short his whole life. He still does.
Yeah. So
I tried to get him to grow his hair a little longer. I did.
Well, and then there are some of us, who we'd be happy just to be able to do anything with our hair because we're losing it.
Tell me, you have that great full head of hair. I'm sitting over here looking like Jack Nicholson in his later years.
Hey, I'm noticing my forehead. There's more and more of it showing, even in my 30s. But I mean, I think that demonstrates that even within the last 50 to 75 years, our culture has changed on some of those issues, and things that were once unspeakable because the Bible said so in our day and age just don't seem to matter. Now, the challenge for biblical interpretation is, does that mean everything is on the table when, we're smarter than Paul in every situation? Or is it just some things that we look to as being cultural artifacts from Paul's day and age and others are not? And that's the defining question when you get to gender and sexual orientation. All of that is how much of that is because of his understanding of the world as opposed to how much of that is God's design for the world. So to go back to your question of, well, what do Christians think about these things? There's a whole spectrum. Some people say every word literally in the New Testament we must follow. And which is why you get some Christians that still, like they won't wear jewelry, or women will still wear head coverings and stuff like that. But I'd say 90% of Christians aren't there. So that's one extreme. And then all the way in the other extreme is you have Christians who say, well, I don't think God cares at all about sexual orientation or gender preference or anything like that. And they still
we went through this
Christians.
last week. We should talk more about the Old Testament.
I know.
There's some heavy duty stuff going on.
I know. Well, then this is in the New Testament even.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm not saying that to get out of answering your question. I'm saying that I think the principal task of Christians today, as it relates to the Bible, is trying to figure out how it is speaking to us in our lives, in our context. And that might be different than how it was a generation ago. It would be different for us as Christians in America as it would for Christians in other parts of the world.
We started this conversation, and this is AM 1400 KVFT, the voice of Fort Dodge. Our guest is Pastor Austin Hill of the First Presbyterian Church. We started this conversation talking about whether it was correct from a moral point of view, or if there was a Christian perspective on paying for transgender surgery.
Mhm.
But I wanted to, I just used that to kick off
Sure.
the conversation. It's a larger conversation on taxes in Christianity. Now, I
Mhm.
know Jesus said something about
render unto Caesar
render
what
unto
is Caesar's.
right? All those sorts of things. But Caesar keeps jacking up his rates and finding new ways for us to render things to him. And
Yeah.
I wish he'd knock it off. you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, what is it? Does Christianity have a perspective on taxes? You have several businessmen in your church now, and I know some of them, and I know how they feel about this.
Sure. Well, I do think it is our responsibility, whether it's through taxes or through the church, and probably realistically it's both, but it is our responsibility as Christians to find ways to provide for what Jesus calls the least of these.
Right.
And in the early church, in Acts chapter 2, we see Christians who were literally selling their possessions so that they would have more money available to give to those who were in need. So that goes beyond just my 10%. I mean, that's actually sacrificing what I have so that others might be cared for. So I do believe that it is a responsibility. It is the responsibility of Christians to care for those who are in need. Now, if the government is going to say, hey, we've got a system, called welfare,
right,
whatever, then fine, we need to pay into that. If we're not going to do that through the government, then we better be doing it as a church. And if we're not going to do it in the church or the government, then I think at the very least, we've got to really wrestle with what Jesus says in the Bible.
Some conservatives will say we should get rid of our welfare system and turn this problem over to the churches. The churches will then take care of those who are in need, mentally handicapped, physically handicapped, aged, infirm. To which I always reply, maybe there was a time that could have been done in the United States of America when we were a much more a Christian group, but I don't think the churches can handle it anymore.
Well, I think the church can't handle it for two reasons. One, as individuals, we don't give enough to our churches to financially make it happen.
Absolutely not.
And then two, when churches receive money, they don't often use it the most altruistically. It's, well, once we've got this money, how can we make sure that our institution continues, as opposed to how can we serve the community to which we've been called? And so it kind of goes both ways. And even, once the church gets the money, it's a little bit of we need to make sure we have this in case of a rainy day. And while I understand that sentiment, in the Old Testament, the prophets told the Israelites that they were called to spend themselves on behalf of the poor. Or Jesus says, whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. And so this idea that we ought to die to ourselves. So there's, again, that sacrifice. And that's a message not just to individuals, but to the church. I think we sometimes assume that because of what the church is doing is good, we need to defend the church at all costs, even if it means we are then no longer being faithful as a church to what God has called us to do. And then we kind of miss the forest for the trees in doing that.
Oh, absolutely.
You can have these churches that shrink and shrink and shrink, but have a foundation in a building, but there's no one in them anymore.
The Catholic Church used to have I don't know how many hospitals all over the country. And they really wouldn't charge for their services if you were Catholic. They're gone now.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is that, the Catholic Church, like all churches, I think, have experienced a real decline in members and in donations. I know the Presbyterian Church, before Reverend Feldman came, was in difficulty. And I was real sorry, and this happened a number of years ago, the Westminster Presbyterians left. Boy, they were a love church, I'll tell you. But they were great people over there. And they had a nice little church, but they just couldn't keep going.
More and more churches just have to find ways to either to split costs with other churches. In the PCUSA, the Presbyterian Church USA, that's the main Presbyterian body in the state of Iowa right now. We are having conversations with all 6 of the presbyteries. So
there's 6 presbyteries in Iowa?
Correct. So Fort Dodge is a part of North Central Iowa Presbytery, if that kind of gives you an indication of the geography. Well, all 6 presbyteries are talking about ways that we can partner together, maybe even share staff or share resources to be more financially viable moving forward in the future. We have all these, regional offices and bodies, and there's a lot there that isn't necessarily needed or isn't just isn't sustainable because of how much it costs versus how many people are involved. So that demonstrates that the denominations and churches kind of all over are wrestling with these questions of what do we do as fewer and fewer people are giving or participating in ways that they used to do so.
Well, I don't know if that's coming back or not,
Yeah.
The world has, especially in my life, and I'm getting to be an older person, changed radically. I don't, I mentioned before that I see a look on my face my dad used to have. He was so confused about the world and its changes that he didn't understand it anymore. And frankly, I do have faith and confidence, though, that I don't need to know what's going to happen next. That there's probably a lot of people, as in generations past, going back maybe a couple thousand years, who get to be my age and they look ahead and not know what's going on. But, the world continues to go.
Well, I feel that even as a 35-year-old, I find myself thinking, man, kids these days. And and there are lots of people who look at me and say, I'm the age of their grandchildren. So,
well, their world is going to be a lot different. Your children and my son and his wife have talked, in probably 30 years, this will be a majority country. And the state of Iowa will have a lot more brown-skinned people in it.
Well, and the church is changing too. I'll say worldwide that the majority of Christians will not be in the West.
I think that's true.
That's North America and Europe. The majority of Christians will not be in the West. I don't know if that switch has happened or if it's happening within the next 20 years.
Pretty close in some of the European countries.
Yeah.
France used to be overwhelmingly Catholic. Some of the most beautiful cathedrals in the world. Notre Dame, for example, caught fire not long ago.
Yeah.
But most of their churches now, they're beautiful Catholic churches, are museums.
But 120 years ago, something like over 90%, 95% of the world's Christians were in Europe and North America.
Yes.
And within my lifetime, it'll be reversed.
Where will they be?
In the global South, so a lot in Africa and in South
so?
Asia. Yeah, the church is exploding in those places. In South America,
South Asia.
Yeah, so like Philippines, Malaysia.
Well, the Catholic Church is pretty heavy there already in the Philippines because of the Spanish influence, of course. But I don't, Islam is growing.
Yeah.
And they're conquerors, essentially.
Well, I think, religion as a whole, I think in some of the Western countries, the more affluent we become, the more educated we become, the less we feel like we need religion at all. Why do I need God if I've got modern medicine?
Well, I think that's a good point. In my younger days, I used to think that religion, especially Christianity, played on people's fears, and that they won converts by going to people who were desperate. Maybe they lost something, or they lost all of their possessions or something. Well, see if you really got to start coming to church, and these things wouldn't happen with such frequency. Well, I didn't really believe that. I thought Bill Maher, the comedian, hit it on the head a few years ago. He said, people always praise Jesus when something good happens, but if there's a terrible car accident and members of their family are involved, they don't say, "Oh, that darn Jesus, he did it again."
Exactly. No, we live in a fallen world.
Yeah,
that's what we say.
Right. Yeah, we live in a fallen world. There's an earthquake or a fire. Oh, that darn Jesus.
Yep.
And that's true. If there's a birth in the family, or good fortune, or a good turn of events, praise Jesus. But we don't seem to go the other way.
Well, I do think God might be in these changes that we're seeing. And so the temptation is to despair. But there have been times in the past, even in the New Testament, the early church, the Holy Spirit was continually leading them, even though they had no idea what the future had in store for them. And I think we can continue to place our hope in the leadership of the Spirit even if we're tempted to despair.
All right, our guest has been Pastor Austin Hill. It's 3:00 in the afternoon.
Hi, this is Leslie Segretti.
And I'm Tom Kreitler, and you can hear the Money Pit every Saturday afternoon from 4 to 6 on the voice of Fort Dodge, AM 1400 KVFD, Fort Dodge.
World markets are watching. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News. Renewed concern about U.S. trade talks with China,
Somebody's got a
which
babysitter,
now
right?
appear to be still on track as President Trump doubles down on a new tariff threat. Fox's John Decker is live at the White House.
A day after the president threatened to increase tariffs on $200 billion in Chinese goods at the end of this week, the president tweeting the United States has been losing for many years $600 to $800 billion a year on trade. With China, we lose $500 billion. Sorry, we're not going to be doing that anymore. Despite the tough rhetoric, China's trade representatives will come to Washington this week for a final round of trade talks. If the president follows through with his threat, it would lead to higher prices on imported Chinese goods, forcing Americans to pay more for everything from computers to clothing. Lisa?
Thanks, John. One key question is whether China's vice premier will be part of this week's talks as originally planned. For now, though, Wall Street seems relieved. Talks are still expected. The Dow down 68 points at the closing bell, but it had been a triple-digit sell-off for much of the day. Back and forth between the Justice Department and a House committee threatening to hold the Attorney General in contempt. Fox's Jared Halpern, live on the Hill.
The Justice Department is inviting the House Judiciary Committee chairman for a meeting on an acceptable accommodation as part of a subpoena for the full unredacted special counsel report on the Russia investigation. Chairman Gerald Nadler has sent a Wednesday vote on a contempt of Congress resolution for Attorney General William Barr after the Justice Department failed to meet a 9 a.m. deadline for the full report. A spokesman for the Justice Department says the Attorney General has taken extraordinary steps and provided some lawmakers with a less redacted version of the report, working in good faith with the committee. Lisa.
Thanks, Jared. Recapping Wall Street, the Dow finishing right around 26,436, down 68. This is Fox News.
Ah, the copperhead snake. It hisses before attacking. But that's not a copperhead. That's the Sullivan's RV freshwater tank overflowing into their black one, which is backing into their vent pipe, making for a very different kind of attack. One that arrives just in time for taco night. It's wild out there. When it gets too wild, Progressive has your RV covered. Quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Guardians of the Grass, run with us on a John Deere X300 Select Series lawn tractor built for versatility. Because when you take pride in your lawn, you do it all. You mulch, bag, haul, grow, mow, and a whole lot more. And that's why the X300 Series takes care of everything with attachments for all your spring and summer projects. Because you're not just doing yard work, you're creating common ground for the whole neighborhood to enjoy. Nothing runs like a Deere. Run with us. Search John Deere X300 for more.
1 million species of plants and animals are threatened with extinction. That warning from conservation scientists around the world, blaming people in part, releasing the UN's first comprehensive report on biodiversity. Robert Watson, who chairs the United Nations panel, says trouble for nature also means trouble for humans.
Let's react now to reduce the loss of biodiversity. We will undermine human well-being for current and future generations.
The report says species are being lost at a rate tens or hundreds of times faster than in the past, and that the degradation of natural habitats, including forests, grasslands, and coral reefs, must be slowed, emphasizing as well, though, that it's not too late. The cold case murder of an Indiana college student is solved almost 5 decades later, thanks to DNA.
19-year-old Pamela Mealim's body was found in the trunk of her car on campus at Indiana State University in 1972. She was tied up and strangled, and thanks to DNA technology, Terre Haute Police Chief Sean Keene says they've put a name to her killer.
And this male's name is Jeffrey Lynn Hand,
who later kidnapped a woman and murdered her husband in 1973. In 1978, Jeffrey Hand also tried to abduct another woman in Kokomo.
A pursuit ensues and gunfire. He shoots the sheriff's deputy twice, and then a city officer there shoots and kills him.
Mealim's sister saying that she's happy to learn that Hand was dead. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
From Illinois, late word of the sentence for a man who tried to detonate what he thought was a car bomb outside a Chicago bar, a judge just sentencing him to 16 years in prison. One more time on Wall Street as the numbers settle, the Dow down 66 at the bell, the NASDAQ down 40, but much lower during the session. I'm Lisa Brady. This is Fox News.
Your news, your town, your station. KVFD News when it breaks.
Good afternoon. I'm Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. 3 people were killed, including 2 children, in a crash on Interstate 80 just west of Coralville on Sunday afternoon. Radio Hour's Matt Kelly reports.
The State Patrol says an SUV was trying to make an illegal U-turn and had slowed in the right lane of the interstate. As the SUV approached the crossover in the median, it pulled into the left lane, directly into the path of the oncoming semi. Troopers say the truck broadsided the SUV and sent it into the median. Reports say 5 people were in the SUV and 3 of them died, including children ages 11 and 13. Another child and adult survived. They're hospitalized in Iowa City. No names or conditions are being released. Radio Iowa, I'm Matt Kelly.
Iowa's joining 29 states and creating some basic rules of the road for vehicles without a human behind the wheel. Representative Ashley Hinson of Marion says although it may be years before driverless or fully autonomous vehicles are in use, it's time to start planning.
The wheels of technology are turning fast moving forward, and vehicle safety is definitely in question for the future. And this bill speaks to many of those things.
The new law will require driverless cars and trucks to carry liability insurance. The manufacturer must certify that all applicable federal safety standards have been met on the vehicle unless an exception has been granted. Hinson predicts lawmakers will have to address other issues surrounding driverless vehicles.
We're going to have to talk about lane striping, work zones, data sharing practices, education and outreach, because let's face it, there is a lot of that needs to happen before these vehicles end up on the road. And I would also anticipate that there will be some further conversations about liability as these vehicles come to fruition.
The new law, which goes into effect July 1st, specifies that driverless buses will be authorized when the technology is ready for the public streets and roads. The governor approved the new law last Friday. Police have arrested a Polk County jail inmate who escaped by using another inmate's identification bracelet. Des Moines police arrested 27-year-old Rodney Clint Moore on Sunday morning in Des Moines, days after he had swapped bracelets with another inmate and been released from the jail about 1:45 a.m. on Friday. Polk County Sheriff's Office detectives learned where Moore was staying and police arrested him without incident. He was returned to the jail where he had been held since April 24th on charges of reckless driving and driving while barred. Moore used the bracelet of 25-year-old inmate Zachary Arthur Titus, who had been charged with escape for allegedly helping Moore leave the jail. Titus was serving a 45-day sentence for probation violation and was set to be released. I'm Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. Have a great day.
Here's the AM 1400 KVFD weatherology forecast. Chance for scattered rain showers this afternoon, otherwise overcast skies. Daytime highs approaching 61, northeast winds 8 to 15 miles per hour. Chance for scattered rain showers again tonight, lows around 43, cloudy skies. Mainly cloudy skies tomorrow, chance for scattered showers 61. From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Currently, it's 61.
Hi, this is Stacy Weirda, broker owner of Neighborhood Realty. Are you thinking about selling your home but not sure who to list with? Well, I have an amazing team of agents with years of experience in 2 locations, all devoted to your real estate needs. Neighborhood Realty covers a vast market area, and that's not all. At Neighborhood Realty, we'll list it, we'll sell it, and you'll move on. Find our information online at neighborhood-realty.net and make sure to follow us on Facebook.
Lawn lovers, run with us on a John Deere Z500 Series Z-Track mower. Built to mow better, faster with an Excel Deep mower deck. Because whether you're up against the clock or a busy day, this zero turn gets it done in almost no time at all. Nothing runs like a Deere. Run with us. Test drive a Z500 Series Z-Track mower at your John Deere dealer during the Take Your Turn sales event.
It's Michael Devine at AM 1400
In the name of justice and the American way of life.
with 60 rounds of freedom.
That's right. I've got 60 rounds of freedom at all times. AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. This part of the program brought to you by the Iowa Corn Growers. Joining me today from Hardin County is Denny Frias, not surprisingly, a corn grower. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm good, Mike.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that. Are you working today? Are you farming today? Is it dry enough over there?
we're doing things around the farmstead. We're too wet to be in the field. We had almost a half an inch of rain just last night, so a little too wet to be out in the field.
Boy, and there's nothing but rain in the forecast here for the next week. And when does that get to be a problem, by the way? Heck, in the next week, we'll be almost to the middle of May, and I don't think we've had that much field work done yet. When do we become concerned?
Well, it's getting to the point where it is going to be a concern. We're here where I am in the state of Iowa. We've been very fortunate to get we've about 3/4 done with our corn planting, so we're ahead of a lot of the other places in the state. But there's places I know in northern Iowa and that really have some real issues of getting out into the field.
You know, we're here with Denny Friest and a lot of our other farm partners to kind of push back on the idea that agriculture in Iowa is somehow not a good thing. Agriculture, farming has its enemies. And if you listen to those who question agriculture as it is today, you can kind of get a feeling that they don't really know what they're talking about, or they're mad about something. And one target is Monsanto. Now, there's a strong anti-corporate feeling in some of these groups. There are, and frankly, Iowa CCI, for example, Iowa Citizens for Community Involvement, they're always, they were in the news, the Des Moines Register this morning. They don't like anything that seems to have happened after the year 1900 from where I'm sitting. But let's talk just for a minute about glyphosate. Now, glyphosate is a farm chemical in Roundup. And just in the last year or so, and I've read quite a bit about glyphosate, Denny, and there is not a single shred of real evidence that indicates that glyphosate causes cancer. But some attorneys have gotten together and found some people who tragically have cancer and who worked with Roundup and glyphosate and other weed killers and successfully argued before juries that glyphosate is a culprit in the cancer of their clients. Now, it's terrible these people got cancer, but what I think it is worse to take these people before a jury. And the jurors, after all, are not chemists. They're ordinary people like I am. And you can throw a bunch of confusing information at them, all the while running the narrative that big ag is somehow responsible, and GMOs, and you can start throwing out all the fear tactics. But do you use glyphosate? Are you up on what I'm talking about? Do you have any concerns about glyphosate?
Well, yes, to all them. The glyphosate, or commonly we call it Roundup, has been a very popular product for the past 25 years. It came in the 1996 it come out, and we used to use it for spot spraying. But every one of us farmers, when we buy our products, our herbicides, we're aware of some of the consequences and some of the safety things we have to do, and we have to treat all of these chemicals to protect ourselves from any unwanted problems. And most people that use this are aware that you don't drink the stuff. You want to wash your hands. Try to use gloves when you use some of these chemicals. We even have pesticide applicator training to make sure that we as farmers are aware of the pitfalls that are out there.
Well, farming usually involves one family on a plot of land, and you have to be careful out there. I mean, you have to be careful that your tractor doesn't roll or any number of things. You have to be careful when you're handling anhydrous. It just stands to reason. But as far as glyphosate itself being responsible for cancer, have you read anything on that?
Well, I've seen the court cases where they made a huge settlement for one person that had used it. And there was, like you said, there was really no evidence that it was the cause of it because, cancer is a disease that occurs quite often in the human population. But what I see is they went after a company, Monsanto specifically, to get a big settlement from them. And that's too bad because, when glyphosate came out, it was a huge benefit to us as farmers to lower our costs of weed control and to have a safety product that we only applied it on the plants that we wanted to kill, which made it very effective. We didn't put it into the soil or anything like that.
You know, when I was a kid, Denny, and our guest is Denny Frias, and the Iowa Corn Growers are sponsoring this hour. When I was a kid, some of us town kids used to hire out to farmers to walk beans. And even in recent years, you would see kids or young people ride. They had ways where you could ride the tractor and spray beans. You don't see that anymore. And the reason is Roundup, as I recall.
Well, Roundup's been the big product that we've been able to use to reduce the fact of having to go out there and walk the beans, so to say. But it's a combination of other herbicides that we use also that specifically control certain things like volunteer corn. It is a weed in a bean field.
You see, what's happened here, Denny, and you know this, that there is a perception that chemical used in farming is dangerous. And it's just part of the overall puzzle that some are trying to put together that shows us that that big companies are big ag companies are somehow evil, and that row crop farming in Iowa is dangerous to your health. That farmers somehow pollute the water with their chemicals. It's quite the portrait if you step back from it. I don't think much of it is true.
Well, look at the alternatives before we had these herbicides on the market. Before, but World War II, in that era, in the 50s, we didn't have these choices, and we went out there and we heavily tilled the soil. Then the concern was that we had erosion and we were washing the soil into the rivers. So we reduced that problem to a very manageable amount, and it's been a practical way. It's just we as farmers have adapted to many new technologies, whether it's the herbicides, whether it's the technology that we use in GPS and applying our products very much so we don't overlap them and everything like that. We've adopted a lot of management practices that have made us much more efficient and environmentally friendly farmers than we were 40, 50 years ago.
In what ways are you more environmentally friendly?
So when I go out to apply my herbicides, I've got controllers on my sprayer, my planter, whatever, that we put on at a precise amount, which we measure the actual volatile product in ounces per acre. We mix it with water, and we can apply that precisely all throughout the field. And if we overlap on end rows or something like that, it automatically shuts it off. So we know exactly the amount we're putting on in each precise square foot of the farm, literally.
Our guest is Denny Frias. He lives over in Hardin County. What's your address over there? I mean, what town are you close to?
Well, I'm closest to a small town of Garden City, but my mailing address is Radcliffe. We're in a very southwest corner of Hardin County.
Okay. So you got your ground is pretty much flat there, and you don't have a lot of hills.
Yeah, we deal with the Clay and Webster pothole prairie soils that, we don't have the hills, so erosion is not a big problem. But, we're very productive land here.
Yeah, and that's been supporting us all in the state of Iowa since there was such a thing as a state of Iowa. And as I mentioned on the air at other times, there is so much disinformation out there aimed at agriculture that it can threaten our existence. And I go back to, and I've told this story several times as well. Not surprisingly, I'm a fan of radio, and I have satellite radio. And I was listening to a West Coast radio station with a bunch of young people, and the question was asked, what do all those people in the Midwest do when they grow that grain? And one of the younger people said, well, they feed it to their livestock. And then there was a long conversation on how terrible it was that animals were slaughtered for food. And I thought to myself, I bet these people are going to go out later and have a steak or a pork chop or some chicken, because I doubt if they're all vegetarians. They just have
corn is everything. It's like in 4,000 different items in the grocery shelf. It's not just livestock feed. We make fuel with it. We use it in all kinds of production and bakery items. I mean, it's in everything. It's part of our life, no matter what you eat.
That's true. And of course, we have Cargill and CJ America up here now, who are there's so I should post on my Facebook page again all of the different uses for corn, but it's extensive. And we up here we use it primarily for feed. that's what they do out at Cargill and CJ America. But yeah, you're right. There's so many different. I think there's such a thing as straws that are made out of corn.
And clothing even is made out of corn fiber.
Really?
Yep.
Tell me about ethanol in your area.
Well, ethanol is it's tremendous up here. I live within 40-mile drive of 4 different ethanol plants. It's given me a basis that's it got down to 8 cents here this spring for price. So it's created a huge demand here in central Iowa for the product, which is really what we at Iowa Corn like to work with, is to create demand for our products, because we not only spend money to market corn, we spend some of the checkoff dollars to create demand for ethanol, for dried distiller grains, and for livestock. These are all things that are very key to the success of our corn and increasing the usage of it.
How much corn do you have? I mean, corn to soybean ratio. What is that on your farm?
Well, on our farm, we raise about 3-to-1 corn to soybeans. Our soils have a higher pH than other parts of the state, and our corn yields will outperform profit-wise better than soybeans. So we grow quite a bit of corn on each year.
Did you have a good yield last year?
Yields have been very good the last several years. Individual fields might have some issues with being too wet or too dry, but overall we've had very good yields, averaging over 200 bushels an acre.
How much of your corn do you take to ethanol plants?
I take some to the ethanol plants, but I also have a feed mill here right on Interstate 35 there. That's a good market for my corn that I deliver a lot of corn to that.
So we have plenty of hogs in Iowa, and they need food as well.
Yeah, and then we also have a 100-car load out of here at Garden City, a mile away, but that market price does not have as good as our local demand that we've created with the livestock and ethanol.
Well, that's great. That's terrific. Denny Frias is our guest. He's from Hardin County. What made you decide to join the Iowa Corn Growers?
Well, it's been a passion for me that over the years that if I'm going to grow the corn, we need to do something to help promote that corn. And I'd like to encourage every farmer not only to give their checkoff dollars, which we as farmer directors decide on where the best investment is, but also to memberships that we can go out and deal with public policy, both at the state legislature and the national legislature, because all commodity groups, we work together to make the rules and regulations much more easier for us as farmers to deal with.
What are some of the things that the Iowa Corn Growers are working on right now?
Well, we're involved heavily with environmental issues. Water quality is something that's on the forefront, that we're working very much with to educate the farmers on how to do a better job of managing their nutrients so they aren't lost in the water. And we're also dealing heavily with overseas marketing, with trade issues. We've got a tremendous demand for our products in the Southeast Asia market. Mexico, Canada are big customers, so we're spending a lot of time and effort developing markets. And in research is the third thing that we're doing quite a bit in with Iowa State and other land-grant colleges to find more uses for corn and increase our cost or lower our cost of production.
I certainly want to talk with you about the crazy trade situation, but I don't want to go there right now. I do. There's a concern about the environment, and you mentioned a couple of things. I mean, are there things the Iowa Corn Growers Association are doing other than educating their members as far as the environment is concerned?
Well, we're at the table. We've got one of our directors that sits on the table of the Environmental Council in Iowa. We're at the table there to work with the people that are concerned of what's going on here. We try to we send out information all the time about the things we're doing and how much better we're doing things than what we did years ago. So, we're trying to do anything we can to put us in a better light. Like you said, so many people aren't aware of what we're doing. We encourage other farmers to tell their story and how they're doing a better job of farming.
Well, I'm glad you consented to come on. I'm always glad to have farmers on the air. If you listen to some news sources, it's just a bunch of greedy people raping the land. How long have you been on your farm, Dennis?
Well, this is my 49th year of actually farming since I started with my father. I've got a son farming with me today, so we're definitely in a family farming operation.
would you do anything to harm the ground that you farm? I mean, why would that happen? I don't understand some of these accusations or implications that farmers are reckless. I mean, if you've been farming that ground that long and your father had the ground before you, wouldn't you be the best steward of that ground?
Well, that's true. Most of us have the attitude that we're going to leave the farm in a better shape than what we get started with. So we all have that as our goal, to improve the environmental impact, that we're doing a better job of keeping the soil productive. Because if we don't keep the soil productive, it's going to affect our profitability.
Well, that's big trouble if we don't keep the soil productive around here.
On the national corn growers level, there's also a soil health partnership that we're doing a lot of work with, talking about soil health and making sure we get the soil as a good texture to it, though it's going to be more productive. And there's programs on that all of our producers are welcome to become part of.
You mentioned the corn growers and working with researchers at Iowa State University. I'm so impressed with those young people down there. I'll tell you, they all are committed to agriculture. A lot of them came off the farm themselves, and man, are they smart young people! I'll tell you, they seem to know where agriculture is going in the future, and it's wow, it's like something from, I don't know, a science fiction movie. But
well, it's beyond just agriculture. We are working with corn growers. We had a presentation from Pat Schnabel, brought one of his researchers to us that has a sensor that we can plug it into this thing here. It's about a 3-inch square box that you plug it with a sensor. You plug it into your corn plant. It will get a reading of how much nitrogen is in that plant, how much it's going to take to finish out a crop, and send it to your cell phone and tell you how much nitrogen you need to be putting on that corn crop at a specific time to maximize your production. This researcher had taken this from developing technology that was dealt with reading. I think it was with people with diabetes and recording and looking in the retina of their eye. This kind of research was taken from that and adapted into agriculture. So there's some really, really interesting things coming out here in the future that where we're going to even manage our crops better than we did.
Boy, I tell you, that's just wild, isn't it? I'm so impressed with those sorts of advancements in agriculture. It's a long, long way from plowing with horses. You know, my dad used to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, we have a toolbox of many tools, including technology, that we have to use out there to do a better job. And the data we collect is huge, and and the effect it has on our production. And we're utilizing that big time with all of us farmers.
Dennis Frias, our guest this portion of the program, brought to you by the Iowa Corn Growers. Dennis, we're going to take about a 7-minute break. We're going to come back and talk about the trade. All right?
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. Give me a call back. This is AM 1400 KVFD.
Active Health Chiropractic presents Kids Summer Savings on Transformation Tuesday. Bring your child in any Tuesday from June 3rd to August 27th for $15 wellness adjustment. Discover the good things that can happen to your child with regular spinal checks, like better concentration and improved immunity. You could say goodbye to your child's digestive issues, bedwetting, sleep issues, and more. All Transformation Tuesday proceeds will go to your child's school booster program. Call Active Health Chiropractic in Fort Dodge for an appointment now. 227-7491.
Alpha Media presents the ultimate Fort Dodge experience. We'll fly 2 of your favorite guests round trip via Air Choice One to Fort Dodge. They'll fly in from St. Louis, Minneapolis, or Chicago on Friday, June 7th. Upon arrival, they'll settle into the Holiday Inn Express for 4 days and 3 nights of Fort Dodge fun and excitement. Your guests will receive 4 tickets to Celebration featuring Sammy Hagar Saturday night, June 8th. They'll also enjoy some of the best burgers in Iowa with a $50 gift card to Rides Bar and Grill. And nobody can visit Fort Dodge without chowing down at Taco Tico. Sunday, they'll enjoy brunch and golfing for 4 at Willow Ridge. And that's not all. Victory Motors is giving them a $50 Visa gift card for even more fun. Enter the names of your friends or family on the Ultimate Fort Dodge contest page at yourfortdodge.com. Deadline for entry is May 23rd. On Friday, May 24th, we'll draw 1 lucky winner. It's the Ultimate Fort Dodge experience from this Alpha Media station.
Message and data rates may apply.
Earning your degree from one of the top business schools in the country might sound impossible to fit into your workload. But what if there were a business degree that furthered your career and gave you access to world-renowned faculty, leaders, and mentors, all on your schedule? One that opened doors to some of the most influential CEOs, tech companies, law firms, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders. And what if you could earn that degree in as little as 16 months, 100% online? To find out more, text DRIVE to 79645. That's DRIVE to 79645. Start your online MBA, information management, or business analytics master's program from the W.P. Carey School of Business at Arizona State University today. Learn more about the W.P. Carey Business Graduate Programs online. Text DRIVE to 79645. That's DRIVE to 79645.
In today's economy, it just makes sense to plan ahead. At Historic Bruce Funeral Home, pre-planning your funeral arrangements can save you money. By planning ahead, you can secure your arrangements at today's prices, no matter when our services are needed. Pre-planning your funeral is one of the most thoughtful things you can do for your family. Call us for details. Historic Bruce Funeral Home, Fort Dodge. Online at brucesfuneralhome.com.
Your news, your town, your station. KVFD News when it breaks.
Good afternoon. I'm Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. 3 people were killed, including 2 children, in a crash on Interstate 80 just west of Coralville on Sunday afternoon. Radio Iowa's Matt Kelly reports.
The State Patrol says an SUV was trying to make an illegal U-turn and had slowed in the right lane of the interstate. As the SUV approached the crossover in the median, it pulled into the left lane, directly into the path of the oncoming semi. Troopers say the truck broadsided the SUV and sent it into the median. Reports say 5 people were in the SUV and 3 of them died, including children ages 11 and 13. Another child and adult survived. They're hospitalized in Iowa City. No names or conditions are being released. Radio Iowa, I'm Matt Kelly.
Iowa's joining 29 states in creating some basic rules of the road for vehicles without a human behind the wheel. Representative Ashley Hinstead of Marion says although it may be years before driverless or fully autonomous vehicles are in use, it's time to start planning.
The wheels of technology are turning fast moving forward, and vehicle safety is definitely in question for the future. And this bill speaks to many of those things.
The new law will require driverless cars and trucks to carry liability insurance. The manufacturer must certify that all applicable federal safety standards have been met on the vehicle unless an exception has been granted. Hinson predicts lawmakers will have to address other issues surrounding driverless vehicles.
We're going to have to talk about lane striping, work zones, data sharing practices, education and outreach, because let's face it, there is a lot of that needs to happen before these vehicles end up on the road. And I would also anticipate that there will be some further conversations about liability as these vehicles come to fruition.
The new law, which goes into effect July 1st, specifies that driverless buses will be authorized when the technology is ready for the public streets and roads. The governor approved the new law last Friday. Police have arrested a Polk County jail inmate who escaped by using another inmate's identification bracelet. Des Moines police arrested 27-year-old Rodney Clint Moore on Sunday morning in Des Moines, days after he had swapped bracelets with another inmate and been released from the jail about 1:45 a.m. on Friday. Polk County Sheriff's Office detectives learned where Moore was staying and police arrested him without incident. He was returned to the jail where he had been held since April 24th on charges of reckless driving and driving while barred. Moore used the bracelet of 25-year-old inmate Zachary Arthur Titus, who had been charged with escape for allegedly helping Moore leave the jail. Titus was serving a 45-day sentence for probation violation and was set to be released. I'm Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. Have a great day.
Yeah, Denny?
Yes.
Yeah, hang on just a minute.
Here's 61. From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Currently, it's 61.
Here's a look at how the markets closed today. May corn down 7 1/4 to 355 3/4. July down 6 1/2 to 364 1/4. September down 6 at 371 3/4. And December corn down 5 1/2 to 382 1/4. May soybeans down 12 at 817 1/2. July down 12 cents at 830 1/4. August down 12 1/4 to 836 1/2. November down 11 3/4 to 853. May wheat closed unchanged at 428. Soybean meal down 180 a ton at 291.80. June live cattle down 115 at 112.27. August down 75 to 108.40. May feeder cattle down 112 to 136.02. August down 202 to 144.35. May lean hogs closed down 297 to 82.37. June down the $3 limit to close at 89.75. From the farm desk, I'm Dwayne Murley.
Sounds like you've got the crud. Cough, fever, sinus pressure, body aches. What should you take? Which over-the-counter medicine is best? You sure don't know, but the people at Daniel Pharmacy do. The pharmacists and technicians at Daniel Pharmacy are ready to help. They drop what they're doing, ask you what you're looking for, go down the aisle with you, and help you find the best medication for your symptoms. Daniel Pharmacy, caring for you and about you for over 50 years at 1114 Central Avenue, downtown Fort Dodge.
Michael Devine at AM 1400 KVFD.
Listen to this.
Making radio great again.
Well, that's right. That's the mission, to make radio great again. And I'm helped today by the Iowa Corn Growers Association, who are bringing you this portion of the program. Our guest from Hardin County, once again, is a corn grower, of course, Denny Frias. How are you, Denny? Welcome back to the program.
I'm doing very well.
Well, I certainly appreciate you taking the time to be here. I don't know what's happening in trade right now. I know we are so dependent on trade in agriculture, and we can get into some facts and figures around corn production and how much of it is exported here in just a few minutes. But first of all, is the Chinese, have you heard that we were supposed to have a Chinese delegation coming to this country to hammer out the final details of a trade agreement that would lift these tariffs, get rid of this trade war, and we could get back to business as usual? I've heard now they're not coming. Over the weekend, President Trump certainly gave an indication that the good news was not forthcoming. Do you know where we're at right now?
No, I'm just like you. We keep hearing all kinds of rumors, but we definitely need to have something positive come out of this, because we have been working hard for years to get access to the market. We were trying to encourage the government to sign on for the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and that didn't happen. And we see that's the future of, we grow all this food in this country, and we need the export markets.
Yeah, we do. I mean, the pork producers tell me that, the soybean guys, and certainly anybody I've ever talked with the corn growers all tell me the same thing. And the soybean guys especially tell me that 1 out of 3 rows goes to China when we're talking soybeans. I don't know. You know how much corn is exported to, I think Mexico is our biggest partner as far as exports, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But I just was on a trip back in March to with the Iowa Department of Marketing with Mark Fisher, and we went there with pork producers and beef producers, and we talked to buyers overseas to create demand for our products. It's interesting over there that Philippines Vietnam actually consumes more pork per capita than the United States does. There's a lot of people over there in them markets, and they're getting more money to spend on meat. And the medical doctors tell the older people that they need more protein, they need more meat in their diet to be healthier. So it's almost contradicting to what we have some of the people here in our country are trying to say, that that meat is the culprit.
Well, that's just absurd. I mean, the Chinese have certainly understand that if you introduce more protein into children's diet, they have a higher IQ as they develop, and they're more productive citizens because they're healthy and able to think better. I mean, this is in China, where they're having, by the way, a terrible outbreak of African swine virus. I hope to God it doesn't come over here. But if that virus does get over here, there's going to be trouble. The point being, though, is that in Japan apparently is interested in importing more of our pork, and that's something that has to be.
Yeah, then the African swine fever is devastating over there because I think they've lost about the equivalent of our production here in Iowa, and swine death over there is just huge. What's happening?
Yeah, and that's and there's one thing the Chinese understand is that people who are hungry are not people who you can easily control. And from what I understand, the Chinese are very concerned about that there's been some incidents in Chinese history where starvation has occurred. And as Bill Horn, our friend up here, has often said that desperate people will do desperate things. But if someone sees their child not eating, they'll do anything. And the Chinese are very, very afraid of that. The Chinese government, I should say. So they're, I'll tell you, they're tough negotiators, though. They're hanging right in there. I'm not privy to any of the negotiations. I wish I could tell you something, but I can't, other than there seems to be a breakdown in progress again. Listening to President Trump over the weekend, I don't know if he's trying to tease us or drive us all nuts with this or what, but I thought that Dennis, I thought that USMCA thing was done around the first of the year, actually before the first of the year. And now I understand it's unraveling. Do you know anything about that?
Well, that's something we have not got the final signature on it. And that's one of the top things that we are working on as a commodity group. We've got to get that signed. It very much determines where our markets are going to go. That's top on our priority when we're dealing with legislative issues, to get that done.
Well, I'm sure it is. What are the problems facing corn growers right now? I mean, we've talked trade. We've talked about, I guess, when you meet, do you discuss groups that are perhaps anti-agriculture? I mean, we talked about that in the last segment, I know. But what are some of the concerns of corn growers right now, or have we covered them?
Well, the biggest concern is the price right now. We've got to get the price up to make it so there's more profit for us. We're all suffering with these prices not being very good. But I know one thing we look at is trying to get more involved with social media and explain to people what farming is all about. So many people in this country, their grandparents were farmers. They're just one or two generations away from what farming is. They don't even understand what we're doing. So it's very key that we contact these people and make them aware of just how important it is to them.
By the way, I'm recording this segment with Dennis Frias of the Iowa Corn Growers, and it will be in a SoundCloud post on my Facebook page as soon as we're done here. And that's at AM 1400 KVFD. So if you, again, want to hear what Mr. Frias has to say again, or any of our guests, that's the place to go. And we're on YouTube, 1400 KVFD. So again, if you want to hear this program again, those are the places to go. This portion of the program brought to us by the Iowa Corn Growers. It's kind of a circle here in Iowa. If the pork producers aren't doing well, if they're not raising as much pork, well, the corn growers have a problem with what they're going to do with their product then.
That's true.
And this trade thing is not doing us any good. Do you know what the hang up is with USMCA?
It's all in the political structure. It's not just only the agricultural exports. A lot of it is with the automobile manufacturing and labor laws in them countries. The one thing that we were really hurting was the dairy thing with Canada. Canada had some money they gave to the dairy producers that really took away our dairy industry to compete. So that's been corrected with the USMCA, and we got to work with these. They're just the closest of them two countries to go across our borders with our products. It's key that we keep them markets open.
Well, yeah, we have to keep the markets going for everybody's benefit. I have heard that there are those who want to push Mexico to treat their workers better in the auto plants, but I don't know how much influence we can have telling another country how to treat their workers. I mean, I fully support people making more money. I'm fully support making a fair and honest wage and all those things. But what are we going to do if they don't want to do it? I don't know. It's an imperfect world. I wish I did know, Denny, but I most certainly don't. So the idea that we'd be hung up on labor rights in another country, I don't know what to say to that. I just don't know what to say to that.
Well, it goes to show that we're in a global world here, a global economy, and what happens in any of the other countries can affect us tremendously. And we have something we have to deal with.
It is something we're going to have to deal with. Again, what other export markets do we have? We mentioned the two big ones, of course, Mexico and China. What other export markets do we have for corn?
Southeast Asia is a big market. When we deal with Asian countries, when it's Taiwan, it's South Korea, it's Malaysia, Philippines, Vietnam, they're growing markets. The population is growing there, even China to some degree. But South Korea is a very good trading customer with us, and they've got a lot of people over there. That's where the population is growing and growing.
Is this just for corn now, or for all ag exports?
Well, we're dealing with corn, but it's a lot of all ag exports, because if we can market more meat, that's consuming more corn too.
Sure.
One of the things we're looking at is getting ethanol into some of these markets. 14 of the world's most polluted cities are in India.
Mm.
And if we can get ethanol in there to clean up the air, we've got the support of the American Lung Association for helping improve air quality issues. So we're working to get our foot in the door in India to get more ethanol into the gasoline, because that's going to clean up the air. And then most of them countries are doing that already. So that's another key market that we're working hard to have more access to.
I was surprised to see that Colombia and Peru, the countries of Colombia and Peru, were top exporters for United States corn.
Yep, the Colombia thing has really grown this past 2 years. It's really become a very good market for us.
And are they using it for feed or ethanol or both, or what?
They do a lot of livestock feed down there. They're a lot of these. Vietnam, for instance, 30 years ago, it was the third poorest country in the world. Today, it's a very modern and developed country. Textiles are big over there. People are working. They got jobs. They're increasing their diet. They're consuming more and more protein. And this is what's happening in a lot of that Southeast Asia area.
We need to remind people of that. Those who push back on the idea of eating meat like it's some kind of bad thing. It's a huge source of protein. Builds muscle. I mean, meat consumption is never mind that it's crucial for agriculture in Iowa. Meat consumption is a healthy thing. It again, other countries seem to recognize that they must improve the protein intake of their young people, or they will lag behind. The young people won't have the intellectual wherewithal to keep up in a modern world. And again, that's recognized in other countries. I don't know why we don't promote that fact more in this country, since we do a lot of livestock production. But hopefully, programs like this, hopefully your social media presence, Dennis, with the Iowa Corn Growers, or whatever other avenues you have to communicate your message and to tell people the plain truth about agriculture, especially corn and ethanol. I mean, that's just got to be done. And say, I'm reminded that one of the leading opponents of GMOs, and for God's sake, God bless Iowa native Norman Borlaug, who came up with genetic engineering. He saved millions of people from starving to death. And there was a campaign to scare the life out of people over GMOs that was successful in a lot of ways. But one of the leading so-called authorities in opposition to GMOs was a guy by the name of Jeffrey Smith. And he doesn't have a science background. He was a former ballroom dancer and yogic flying instructor up at Fairfield University there. I mean, those were his credentials to speak on the dangers of GMOs. And by the way, a lot of people bought his books and believed what he had to say. And we just had to push back against that sort of nonsense.
I appreciate very much what you do with your social program, where you got your Facebook and reaching out and telling your story. You're doing a lot of good for us. what you're doing too. I really appreciate that.
Well, I'll tell you, Dennis, this all started because of a beef producer in the area. Dean Black's his name, and he came in and told me that, even people in little towns in Iowa, younger people, don't have a clue about farming. I didn't grow up on a farm, but a third of my high school class were farm kids, But that's not the way the world is now. I was in high school almost 50 years ago.
Yeah.
The world has changed, and I just assumed, and you should never do that all of us shared the same idea about agriculture, that we all understood that agriculture was the economic driver in our state, and that farmers and agriculture were a positive good for all of us. But there's too many groups out there with all these different agendas, whether they be cruelty to animals. And who's in favor of cruelty to animals, by the way? Nobody's in favor of any of these things. Nobody wants to pollute the soil. Nobody wants to pollute the water or any of those things, least of all farmers. But why farmers in grain production, pork production are singled out and for special attention by activist groups, I don't know how that happened. But
well, just look at the state of Iowa. We have a tremendous shortage of workers. Our unemployment is at a record low here. And production agriculture can't find as many jobs as they can't find the people who work the jobs that are out there.
Is there a labor problem in your area? We have a pork plant opening up in our area, Prestige Farms.
We don't hire much extra labor on our farm, but to get good jobs out here, there's all over in these small towns. There's people looking for people to come work.
Really, in the ag industry or what?
Well, and everything. I know you go to the grocery store, you go to restaurants, or you'll see people, people looking for jobs, and it's harder to find them to get good quality people to work on the farm because we need good people there too.
Well, some of the truck driving companies tell me they can't find applicants that can pass a drug test, which is a sorry comment on the labor pool in Iowa. I got to tell you, they can't find guys who can pass a drug test, for crying out loud. That's wow. Well,
But Iowa's always been known for having a good work ethic.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
We've got some good workers out here too. It's those that to me, farming is a great occupation to be in. I grew up in it all my life, and that's all I've ever wanted to do. And it's a great occupation.
Yeah, and there's a lot of satisfaction, I think, that you can take from your occupation. And I always was proud that I was from Iowa because we fed the world. There was boy. If there's anything more important than producing food for people, and there's so many, I'll tell you, I served in the military, and I don't have war stories to tell, but I'll tell you, I've seen hungry people, and I've seen poor people living in terrible conditions, and man, we don't have that here, and we should be so grateful for that.
Well, we're fortunate to live here where we do. We've got a great country here to live in, and a lot of opportunities.
Yes, sir, we do, absolutely. Denny Friest is our guest. He's with the Iowa Corn Growers. We do have a couple of minutes left here, Denny. What else can we say about the future of the Iowa corn growers here in Iowa, and what's it look like as far as the fields are concerned, and the predictions for 2019, if any?
Well, we need to create our work. We're working hard to create more demand. We've got to create demand for our product and open the markets because there's people out there needing to buy our food. And we just got to keep going on that and work with, we're at the table with the trade people at Washington, D.C. They know that we're in trouble, and hopefully we get them convinced that they're going to be there to expand these markets. We've had promises from President Trump, and we're still waiting for him to follow through with them. So it's a global economy, and we've got a lot of things to keep involved with. So I'm proud of the fact that we as a commodity organization, along with the other commodities, are at the table and doing a good job for the betterment of all farmers.
Boy, if we could just get that year-round E15, that'd be a good thing, wouldn't it?
Well, that's a good thing too, yes. And we're getting more and more stations to put E15 out there. We got to make everybody aware that if you've got a car 2001 or newer, that it can burn E15 with no problem. Electronic ignition is is a thing that all cars can utilize E15.
It is hard to find those E15 pumps on occasion, though.
It can be, but we're getting more and more of them, and we ask your suppliers, why don't you have E15 for me? Because I know I've got a flex fuel truck that I burn E85 in, and I've got a couple places that I can go to get that, and it's worthwhile doing it because it's a cheaper price, it's a good product, and I'm also utilizing more corn. That's what it's all about.
Well, yeah, utilizing the product here in Iowa. Is the gas mileage as good when you use E15?
The gas mileage is like 10 or 20% less, but the price is about 30% less. Right now it's 70 cents less than E10. So that's for E85. So it's very much easy to put that in there and use that instead of E85. E15 is about the same gas mileage, but it's about a nickel a gallon cheaper. And I don't think there's any difference in gas mileage when you compare E15 to E10 myself.
Good enough. This portion of the program brought to you by the Iowa Corn Growers Association. Our guest is corn grower Denny Frias from Hardin County. Sir, it's been a great pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for everything you do and helping us out, and encourage everybody to be a supporter of what we do here as a commodity organization.
By golly, that's the whole goal, is if we can understand agriculture and support agriculture. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
All right.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge.
If you're drowning in IRS tax debt, please get ready to take down this number to take advantage of the new IRS tax forgiveness programs. The IRS has recently hired private debt collection agencies to start collecting your outstanding taxes.
Prior to calling Superior Tax Relief, I owe the IRS $33,000, and my wages had just been garnished. Superior Tax Relief put a stop to the garnishment and was able to resolve my tax problem. I walked away owing close to nothing. I would highly recommend Superior Tax Relief. They saved my life.
We can protect you from the added fees and negotiate your tax liability. Superior Tax Relief can set you free from your tax issues. Call Superior Tax Relief to find out how you can qualify for the Fresh Start program that's now available. Don't hesitate. Call today. Call 800-711-5099. The consultation is free. The information is free. This call could save you thousands. Call 800-711-5099. 800-711-5099. That's 800-711-5099.
Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services.
Oh, why not just cremate me when I'm gone?
Sounds simple, doesn't it? However, there are many options to consider when cremation is chosen. From simple to detailed, we at Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services can help you create a unique commemoration.
Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services.
Hi, I'm Robert. I have 4 kids, 11 grandkids, 5 great-grandkids, and I live with HIV. It took me a long time for my wife to convince me that it was okay to ask for help from people who understand what I'm going through. So I reached out to the Iowa Department of Public Health and found out I qualified for Ryan White Services. The support is quite impressive. They help me with medication and medical care, financial stuff, transportation, counseling, and even housing if I needed it. They treat me with respect and help me to understand that I'm not alone. Did you know there are over 3,000 Iowans living with HIV? I didn't have a clue. But I know now that how we take care of ourselves and how we manage our care are 2 of the most important ways we can live our best lives. I'm living with HIV, not dying from it. Why wait? Reach out for testing and care services at stophiviowa.org.
Hi, I'm Amber. I'm a mom of 2, and I live with HIV. When I first received my diagnosis, I was really worried about how I was going to provide for my kids because I knew taking control of my diagnosis was going to be expensive. So I started looking for any resources that could help us out, and I found out I was eligible for Ryan White Services through the Iowa Department of Public Health. I qualified for medication and medical care, financial help, transportation, housing, and even counseling. I'm amazed by how much support is available, and I wish I had talked to someone sooner. Especially now that I know I'm not alone. Over 3,000 Iowans are living with HIV. How we take care of ourselves and how we manage our care are 2 of the most important ways we can live our best lives. I'm living with HIV, not dying from it. Why wait?
Reach out for testing and care services at stophiviowa.org.
By the way, the Friends of the St. Edmunds Ball was held last Saturday night, and Ben Crimmins, Jen Crimmins were in here. Jamie Lunn and Mitch Lunn, they were the co-chairs of this year's St. Edmunds Ball. And they were here, and they talked about breaking the record set in 2009 by Nevin and Jill Mulholland and Tom and Jane Condon. And I thought, well, that's a big goal. Hope you can do it. They did do it. They raised $315,000 last Saturday night for the Friends of the St. Edmund Ball, through the Friends of the St. Edmund Ball. So congratulations to the Crimmins and the Lunds. Great cause. Must have been a great evening. 4 o'clock, KVFD, Fort Dodge, Iowa.
This is Gary Rima, the voice of the UNI Panthers, and you can listen to exciting Panther sports right here on the voice of Fort Dodge, AM 1400, KVFD.
Ratcheting up the pressure on Iran. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News.
What we've been trying to do is to get Iran to behave like a normal nation.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo speaking at a conference in Finland as U.S. warships and bombers head for the Persian Gulf. The U.S. citing credible intelligence of a possible threat from Iran just weeks after the Trump administration designated Iran's Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization, which prompted Iran to call U.S. military forces in the Middle East terrorists.
We have continued to see activity that leads us to believe that there's escalation that may be taking place.
Pompeo says appropriate actions are being taken from a security standpoint and to make sure the president has a wide range of options. The trade talks are still on. China preparing to send a delegation to the U.S. as planned for a final round of talks beginning Wednesday. There had been concern they might pull out after President Trump tweeted threats about more tariffs. China's foreign ministry spokesman says they want to make a deal.
He said, quote, "As a matter of urgency, we hope that the U.S. side will make joint efforts with China to achieve a mutually beneficial and win-win agreement on the basis of mutual respect. This is not only in the interest of China, but also in the interest of the U.S. side and is the general expectation of the international community."
Fox Business Network's Blake Berman at the White House. The uncertainty rattling stocks, but after a 400-point plunge early on, the Dow finished down 66 points. President Trump's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, preparing to spend his first night in federal prison, reporting to Otisville, New York earlier today, telling reporters before he left,
"There still remains much to be told, and I look forward to the day that I can share the truth."
Cohen has to serve at least 30 and a half months of a 3-year sentence for lying to Congress, tax evasion, and campaign finance violations. This is Fox News.
Ah, the bull elk's bugle, one of nature's most wondrous sounds. That is not a bull elk, that's Kim. Her RV sewage tank is spewing all over her camper. Way out in the middle of elk country. Yep, there's an elk. And that's Kim. It's wild out there. When it gets too wild, Progressive has your RV covered. Quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Guardians of the Grass, run with us on a John Deere X300 Select Series lawn tractor built for versatility. Because when you take pride in your lawn, you do it all. You mulch, bag, haul, grow, mow, and a whole lot more. And that's why the X300 Series takes care of everything, with attachments for all your spring and summer projects. Because you're not just doing yard work, you're creating common ground for the whole neighborhood to enjoy. Nothing runs like a Deere. Run with us. Search John Deere X300 for more.
Lawsuits keep coming over an infamous data breach.
The massive 2017 Equifax data breach exposed the personal and financial information of almost 148 million people, including many in Indiana.
It is our contention that Equifax knew full well that they had gaping holes in their cybersecurity systems.
Attorney General Curtis Hill joining other states that have filed lawsuits against Equifax,
seeking civil penalties, consumer restitution, costs, and injunctive relief.
There's also a class action suit in the case. A congressional committee has called the breach preventable. Equifax later offered free credit monitoring for people who were affected. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
The owner of the horse that won and then lost the Kentucky Derby is appealing the decision that overturned the win after two other jockeys complained of interference. Maximum Security's owner filing an appeal with the Kentucky Racing Commission. The world will have to wait a few more days for its first glimpse of Britain's newest royal. Prince Harry and wife Meghan welcoming a baby boy early today, 7 pounds, 3 ounces.
I'm so incredibly proud of my wife. And as every father and parent would ever say, you know, your baby is absolutely amazing, but this little thing is absolutely to die for. So I'm just over the moon.
The initial announcement was made on the royal couple's Instagram account hours before the traditional proclamation was posted outside Buckingham Palace. Fox's Jonathan Hunt.
It's all very untraditional. She had the baby at home being Frogmore Cottage, not nearly as humble as it sounds, on the grounds of the Queen's Windsor estate. The Queen is at the castle, so has presumably met the little one, as is Doria Ragland. That's Meghan's mother. She flew over from LA for the birth.
At this point, still no name yet, so the bookies are having a field day. Alexander emerging as one of the betting favorites. I'm Lisa Brady. This is Fox News.
Your news, your town, your station. KVFD News when it breaks.
Good afternoon. I'm Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. 3 people were killed, including 2 children, in a crash on Interstate 80 just west of Coralville on Sunday afternoon. Radio Hour's Matt Kelly reports.
The State Patrol says an SUV was trying to make an illegal U-turn and had slowed in the right lane of the interstate. As the SUV approached the crossover in the median, it pulled into the left lane, directly into the path of the oncoming semi. Troopers say the truck broadsided the SUV and sent it into the median. Reports say 5 people were in the SUV and 3 of them died, including children ages 11 and 13. Another child and adult survived. They're hospitalized in Iowa City. No names or conditions are being released. Radio Iowa, I'm Matt Kelly.
Iowa's joining 29 states and creating some basic rules of the road for vehicles without a human behind the wheel. Representative Ashley Hinson of Marion says although it may be years before driverless or fully autonomous vehicles are in use, it's time to start planning.
The wheels of technology are turning fast, moving forward, and vehicle safety is definitely in question for the future. And this bill speaks to many of those things.
The new law will require driverless cars and trucks to carry liability insurance. The manufacturer must certify that all applicable federal safety standards have been met on the vehicle unless an exception has been granted. Hinson predicts lawmakers will have to address other issues surrounding driverless vehicles.
We're going to have to talk about lane striping, work zones, data sharing practices, education and outreach, because let's face it, there is a lot of that needs to happen before these vehicles end up on the road. And I would also anticipate that there will be some further conversations about liability as these vehicles come to fruition.
The new law, which goes into effect July 1st, specifies that driverless buses will be authorized when the technology is ready for the public streets and roads. The governor approved the new law last Friday. Police have arrested a Polk County jail inmate who escaped by using another inmate's identification bracelet. Des Moines police arrested 27-year-old Rodney Clint Moore on Sunday morning in Des Moines, days after he had swapped bracelets with another inmate and been released from the jail about 1:45 a.m. on Friday. Polk County Sheriff's Office detectives learned where Moore was staying and police arrested him without incident. He was returned to the jail where he had been held since April 24th on charges of reckless driving and driving while barred. Moore used the bracelet of 25-year-old inmate Zachary Arthur Titus, who had been charged with escape for allegedly helping Moore leave the jail. Titus was serving a 45-day sentence for probation violation and was set to be released. I'm Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. Have a great day.
Here's the AM 1400 KVFD Weatherology forecast. Chance for scattered rain showers this afternoon, otherwise overcast skies. Daytime highs approaching 61, northeast winds 8 to 15 miles per hour. Chance for scattered rain showers again tonight, lows around 43, cloudy skies. Mainly cloudy skies tomorrow, chance for scattered showers 61. From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Currently, it's 61.
The legendary B.J. Thomas returns to Wild Rose Casino and Resort Saturday, May 18th.
Raindrops keep falling on my head.
Don't miss an intimate performance with B.J. Thomas. Tickets are available now at the Iowa store inside the casino or online at wildroseresorts.com/Jefferson. B.J. Thomas. Get your tickets now. Wild Rose Casino and Resort, Jefferson. You'd rather be here.
Nothing's worrying.
When severe weather threatens, keep it here for the Severe Weather Advisor. Brought to you by Creative Signs and Graphics Fort Dodge. For signs, decals, vehicle graphics, magnets, logos, customized documents, and more. If your business needs it, Creative Signs and Graphics can make it. And a stitch above the rest embroidery, Fort Dodge. Step out in style with quality brands, timely turnaround, and professional service. A stitch above the rest. Embroidery professionals worth finding. Remember, when severe weather threatens, stay with your friends on KVFD.
I'm Jamie Brundage, owner of Historic Bruce Funeral Home. We're a full-service funeral home with an off-site crematory. At Bruce's, we specialize in pre-arrangements and family support before, during, and after the service. We also offer beautiful memorial items to help you remember your loved one forever. Bruce Funeral Home is proud to be by your side every step of the way throughout the funeral process. Historic Bruce Funeral Home, Fort Dodge.
Connect to this radio station from all across the country. Take us to the gym, shopping. How about a road trip? Listen to us now on the free iHeartRadio app. You'll never miss a moment with your favorite radio station. Download the free iHeartRadio app and search for the station so we can go wherever you want us to.
Have you ever wondered how the brain works? What makes us tick? Join me, Greg Woods, every Wednesday morning for all the latest news on the brain, on aging, and the science behind it all. It's The Mind Boggles, every Wednesday morning at 8:30 on AM 1400 KVFD.
Today, business happens here, and virtually anywhere. Because today, innovative companies are reinventing the way business happens, and they need people who can keep up. With the expertise and technology to get packages to over 150 million delivery points. So, who can help you deliver the future of commerce? The United States Postal Service. See why we deliver more e-commerce packages to homes than anyone at USPS.com.
Michael Devine at AM 1400.
In the name of justice and the American way of life.
With 60 rounds of freedom.
You don't have bad luck. The reason that bad things happen to you is because you're a dumbass.
Michael Devine, the Doctor of Truth.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to confess?
At AM 1400 KVFD.
That's right. If you have a confession to make, please call 955-1400, especially if you're a woman. I'll tell you, I'd love to hear your confession. I mean,
careful.
Instead, we got my good old cousin Jerry Schnurr on the phone here. How you doing, Jerry?
Pretty good today. How are you?
Well, I'm doing real good. I kind of wish you would stop raining. I think I saw an arc float by here just a few minutes ago, but
well, they didn't stop and pick us up.
It did
you and
not.
I both left behind.
It did not, and if they left me behind, they probably knew what they were doing. So
that's right.
There we go. Jerry Schnurr is a local attorney, and Jerry's has been on the air with me for 10 years, and we always talk about the judiciary, the judicial system, and how it affects our lives. Of course, were you out at Eggs and Issues Saturday, Jerry?
I did not make it out there Saturday. No.
Well, to be honest, neither did I. But I got a full briefing on what happened at Eggs and Issues, and there was a couple of points of conversation. The first that I want to bring up with you anyway was regarding Tom Miller, the longtime Attorney General of the state of Iowa. Now, the Republican Party proposed, and I believe they did pass, a restriction on the Attorney General's ability to join lawsuits in opposition to President Trump. And one of the reasons they did that, they told the audience out there, excuse me.
Bless you.
Bad sneeze there.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons they wanted to push back on the Attorney General's independence when it comes to lawsuits suing President Trump. Tom Miller has been, he's been the Attorney General almost as long as I can remember, probably since the 70s. He apparently had joined, since President Trump has been in office, which is 2.5 years, more or less, 14 lawsuits opposing President Trump on some grounds in some case. During the 8 years of the Obama administration, Attorney General Miller joined a lawsuit in opposition to President Obama's policies just once. So the feeling is, and I find favor with this position, is the Attorney General, a longtime Democrat, is using his office and taxpayer money for partisan purposes. I don't particularly care to have my money used that way. I don't care if it's a Republican or a conservative or a liberal or not. I really think the Attorney General has some very specific duties, and they do not include partisan attacks on a president of the other party. Of course, Attorney General Miller has been elected, but his duties can be assigned or proscribed, I should say, not assigned. But they can be directed by the legislature and the governor, and I believe they did push back on his ability to join these lawsuits. Do you think that was a good thing?
Well, I guess I take the view that the Attorney General should have some independence from the political branch of the legislative branch, and even some from the executive branch. I think, especially here in Iowa, since it's an elected position, and the duties of the Attorney General primarily looking at the laws and law enforcement and trying not to be partisan in those areas. I think my concern would be, if what I have is that there should be some independence, and it's not partisan. I don't care if it's Republican or Democratic. I think the Attorney General needs some independence and some leeway to act, and shouldn't be hampered by the political concerns of the legislature or the governor. So much so, and so to the extent that that's what the legislation does, then I think the Attorney General should have some leeway there.
I agree with you 100%. Mr. Miller, Attorney General Miller, has announced that he will not seek another term. I don't know how long he's been the Attorney General of the state of Iowa, but he's been the Attorney General for a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm unaware of his attempt to use his office, as it appears he has done in this case. I do support those in the legislative and executive branch who have looked askance at Attorney General Miller and how he is using his office, and more importantly, taxpayer money. I do believe, as you do, in the independence of the Attorney General. I want the Attorney General to be independent and to pursue cases. I also don't want to see the Attorney General or anyone use their office for political purposes. It seems like Attorney General Miller, to me in this case, as he nears the end of his long tenure, has decided to use his office for partisan purposes. Now, the question I have for you is, if an Attorney General does this, do you think the legislature should act?
If the Attorney General acts in a partisan way,
yes,
I think it gives them some grounds to act. But I still don't think that. I think if they do, they have to. I think the legislature has to be very careful not to infringe on the independence, because even though the legislature or the governor may have a different view of what the Attorney General should be doing, and may see it as political, even though it may not be, because it challenges a law. For example, it challenges a law or position that is politically akin to the legislature, the majority in the legislature. Then they would see that maybe as a political attack, when maybe it's not. Maybe it's a legitimate view that the law was improper, it's unconstitutional, they shouldn't extend a power or take away, or whatever the challenge might be. And so you have to be careful that we're not just saying, well, it's a political decision because it doesn't agree with me. And again, it's not partisan, but you run into this no matter what side you're on. I'm sure we've had more conservative attorney generals and more liberal legislators that haven't agreed always in the courses that have been taken. But I think as long as there's room for that debate about what the law should be or shouldn't be, that the Attorney General has the position to do that. Now, does the legislature, so that's a little different question whether they should do it. The question is whether they can do it. And they probably can do it. They probably can do some of this. I'm not sure, but they probably have some authority to act. But I'm not sure what the limitations of the authority of the legislature are in that regard, because the Attorney General is actually under the judicial branch of government.
Yeah.
Here in Iowa under the Constitution. And so I'm not sure how much, you get into the separation of powers. How much power does one branch of government have to tell the other branch of the government how to function or not function, or what they do or don't do? And I'm not sure what the extent of the legislature's power is there.
Well, I think I haven't heard exactly, but I think the legislature did pass some sort of law that will restrict the ability of the Attorney General to join lawsuits to sue the president.
Yeah,
I know.
Is it just this president or any president?
Any president, I'm sure. Believe me, if it were just this president, I'd have something to say about that. But not that my saying something about it would do any good. But I would certainly raise my voice in opposition to that. That's for sure. And frankly, I don't remember who the previous Attorney General was. It's been too long.
I can't either. I don't know if it. I don't know. It has been a long time. I don't know if it's Larry Scalise.
Scalise was in the late 60s, early 70s, I believe.
Okay. Turner was for a while, wasn't he? Was that afterwards?
Well, I don't know about that.
I don't know either. But it has been. I think I saw something where he's been Attorney General 10 terms.
10 four-year terms. 40
so
years. Wow.
This is his 10th term as Attorney General.
See, I think in the 1980s, he took a break. He left office to run for governor, I think.
Yeah, he did.
And it was out 4 years and came back and won again. So I don't know. It's really not relevant. I was just speculating out loud. I don't really remember who was or anything. But of course, those in the Democratic Party immediately came to Tom Miller's defense. So are we even going to politicize the Attorney General's office here?
Well, it's happened, I guess. With the passage of legislation, I guess it's happened. I don't know if the governor signed it yet.
I don't know that for sure, and I can't find it. So I started to look for it online here before we went on the air, and I can't find whether the governor has signed it or not. So anyway, she did sign, and this was another bone of contention out at Iowa Central during Eggs and Issues. She did sign the bill that would change the way we select our Supreme Court justices. I don't think the change was that much. I don't think it was that big a deal. But there's always some partisans in the crowd that want to make it a big deal. But after all the huffing and puffing, I don't, and you and I have talked about it a few times, I really don't see the big change. Did you see much of a change there, or are you concerned about the change at all?
A little bit concerned about it. It wasn't nearly as bad as it could have been and what it started out as. I am concerned about the 2-year term for Chief Justice and the instability that introduces to the court. The court is supposed to be stable and not as fluid, maybe as the legislature, and responsive to politics and political views. And this could create more of that situation and politicize the seat of the Chief Justice somewhat, because the Chief Justice has a lot of, they're the head of the administration of the entire judicial system. It's not just a representative or a senator. They're the head of the entire administration of our judicial system. And it's a complicated, difficult task. And I'm concerned about the instability there because of only 2-year terms. And then the concern about the instability of how the court is administered and changing administration and methods. And policies within the judiciary of how cases and how things are handled.
I do want to just as we wrap up our time with Jerry Schnurr here, go back to a Supreme Court decision in 2013. It was on May 3rd in 2013, I believe, that this decision came down, that birth certificates of same-sex parents, now these are same-sex parents, must reflect the same-sex parents as the parents on the birth certificate. In the past, it has been Iowa law that you had to have the father and mother listed on the birth certificate. That is really the way it's done. It can't be done with same-sex people. However, the Supreme Court overturned that law requiring reality on birth certificates. And I'm drawn to just a quick segment or a statement written by Associate Justice David Wiggins at the time. And this is what he had to say regarding demanding that same-sex parents be the only parents listed on a birth certificate. Justice Wiggins wrote, by naming the non-birthing spouse on the birth certificate of a married lesbian couple's child, the child is ensured support from that parent, and the parent establishes fundamental legal rights at the moment of birth. Therefore, this is the key line here, therefore, the only explanation for not listing the non-birthing lesbian spouse on the birth certificate is stereotype or prejudice. I would suggest, Jerry, there's one other reason. Same-sex people cannot be the parent of a child. That seems to be irrelevant here to Justice Wiggins.
Well, if you have same-sex parents, and let's choose the lesbian couple, and they go to a sperm bank,
right?
Who's the father?
Well,
who's the other parent?
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. I would have to say that I would have to say that be noted on the birth certificate. I mean, the idea that we should have a same-sex couple is a fantasy. I mean, it's
we do that with adoptions.
What do we do with
adoptions?
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. What do we do with adoptions?
With adoptions, the birth certificate is reissued with the new parent listed on the
adoptive parents.
Yeah, the change of name of the child is, and now you got me because
I wasn't trying to.
I trapped myself. Maybe I don't know. Well, that's a good question, but I know we changed. It's been a while, and I know we changed the name of the child, and you terminate the parental rights of the natural parent.
Right.
They have no rights. The child has no rights with regard to that person, and the parent has no right with regard to that child. And so I think, I can't remember for sure, I'll have to look.
Well, I will say, and I'm not trying to start up with you here, Jerry, but this statement by Justice Wiggins is sociology at best, and at worst, it's flat out dishonest. It's just dishonest in its core. It is really legislating from the bench and legislating in a way that defies reality itself, even common sense. But it's the law in Iowa. Mm-hmm. It has been now for since 2013.
Yeah,
it's remarkable.
Yeah.
If you're looking for some of the reasons that there's pushback against the Supreme Court, it's these decisions like this and these statements like this.
Well, it's throughout the country because those birth certificates and the status between them create certain legal rights between the child and the adult. And
I think that should have been done. I mean, if we're going to have same-sex parents, fine. But I think there could have been some other legal instrument used other than a birth certificate to define immediately the rights of the individual parents.
Maybe that's something the legislature could address.
Maybe that's something they could.
Yeah.
I'll bring it up to them the next time I see them.
Yeah.
Jerry Schnurr has been our guest. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Mike. Have a good day.
You too. This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge.
Michael Devine at AM 1400 KVFD.
Listen to this.
Making radio great again.
It's 428.
Hi, I'm Tommy. I'm a farmer, a wife, a mom, a leader in my community, and I live with HIV. My life is just like yours. I get up every day hoping for the best day possible out in field, I feed my soul with hard work and am dedicated to making the most out of every day. I wasn't always so optimistic, but once I found out that I'm just one of over 3,000 Iowans living with HIV, I knew I wasn't alone. I reached out to the Iowa Department of Public Health and found out I qualified for medication and medical care, financial help, transportation, housing, and counseling through Ryan White funding. That was a huge relief to me and my family. I've taken control of my diagnosis and take care of myself so I can live my best life. I'm living with HIV, not dying from it. Why wait? Reach out for testing and care services at stophiviowa.org.
Your news, your town, your station. KVFD News when it breaks.
Good afternoon. I'm Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. 3 people were killed, including 2 children, in a crash on Interstate 80 just west of Coralville on Sunday afternoon. Radio Iowa's Matt Kelly reports.
The State Patrol says an SUV was trying to make an illegal U-turn and had slowed in the right lane of the interstate. As the SUV approached the crossover in the median, it pulled into the left lane, directly into the path of the oncoming semi. Troopers say the truck broadsided the SUV and sent it into the median. Reports say 5 people were in the SUV and 3 of them died, including children ages 11 and 13. Another child and adult survived. They're hospitalized in Iowa City. No names or conditions are being released. Radio Iowa, I'm Matt Kelly.
Iowa's joining 29 states and creating some basic rules of the road for vehicles without a human behind the wheel. Representative Ashley Hinson of Marion says although it may be years before driverless or fully autonomous vehicles are in use, it's time to start planning.
The wheels of technology are turning fast moving forward, and vehicle safety is definitely in question for the future. And this bill speaks to many of those things.
The new law will require driverless cars and trucks to carry liability insurance. The manufacturer must certify that all applicable federal safety standards have been met on the vehicle unless an exception has been granted. Hinson predicts lawmakers will have to address other issues surrounding driverless vehicles.
We're going to have to talk about lane striping, work zones, data sharing practices, education and outreach, because let's face it, there is a lot of that needs to happen before these vehicles end up on the road. And I would also anticipate that there will be some further conversations about liability as these vehicles come to fruition.
The new law, which goes into effect July 1st, specifies that driverless buses will be authorized when the technology is ready for the public streets and roads. The governor approved the new law last Friday. Police have arrested a Polk County jail inmate who escaped by using another inmate's identification bracelet. Des Moines police arrested 27-year-old Rodney Clint Moore on Sunday morning in Des Moines, days after he had swapped bracelets with another inmate and been released from the jail about 1:45 a.m. on Friday. Polk County Sheriff's Office detectives learned where Moore was staying and police arrested him without incident. He was returned to the jail where he had been held since April 24th on charges of reckless driving and drive-in while barred. Moore used the bracelet of 25-year-old inmate Zachary Arthur Titus, who had been charged with escape for allegedly helping Moore leave the jail. Titus was serving a 45-day sentence for probation violation and was set to be released. I'm Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. Have a great day.
Here's a look at how the markets closed today. May corn down 7 1/4 to 355 3/4. July down 6 1/2 to 364 1/4. September down 6 at 371 3/4. And December corn down 5 1/2 to 382 1/4. May soybeans down 12 at 817 1/2. July down 12 cents at 830 1/4. August down 12 1/4 to 836 1/2. November down 11 3/4 to 853. May wheat closed unchanged at 428. Soybean meal down 180 a ton at 291.80. June live cattle down 115 at 112.27. August down 75 to 108.40. May feeder cattle down 112 to 136.02. August down 202 to 144.35. May lean hogs closed down 297 to 82.37. June down the $3 limit to close at 89.75. From the farm desk, I'm Dwayne Murley.
Wash avocados before eating them, and any fruits and vegetables for that matter. Hi, I'm Julie Harker with Healthy Living on Brownfield. The Food and Drug Administration recently warned that 17% of avocado skin samples tested showed Listeria bacteria. but we don't eat the skin, how can it still be a food safety risk? Because the knife you use to cut into the skin can drag any bacteria into the fruit or vegetable inside and cause contamination. Bacteria can also be picked up by handling the fruit or vegetables. When you peel fruit by hand, such as an orange, if there's bacteria on the outside, it can transfer onto the inside, the part you will be eating. But what does washing your produce really mean? It means rinsing it in running water thoroughly. But first, wash your hands with soap for 20 seconds and give them a rinse. So here's what you do next. The FDA advises first cutting away any damaged or bruised areas of the produce. Then rinse the foods under running water, but do not use any soap, detergent, bleach, or commercial food washes. Use a clean produce brush to firmly scrub melons, cucumbers, and avocados, any fruits or vegetables like that have a firm skin. Dry the produce with a clean paper towel or a clean cloth. The FDA says bagged produce labeled pre-washed is safe to eat without washing anymore, but it wouldn't hurt to rinse it again before eating. I'm Julie Harker with Healthy Living on Brownfield.
We depend on our drinking water supply daily, but where does that water come from? Your water provider encourages you to get to know your local water source so together we can protect and preserve it. The investments we make as a community to protect us now ensure we have a sustainable drinking water supply for the future. Visit drinktap.org to learn more. This message is brought to you by the American Water Works Association and your local water provider.
It's 4 a.m., Monday, and you're literally sucking baby snot through a tube because she's congested. Man, that's love. And if you love her that much, love her enough to make sure she's buckled in the right car seat. To make sure your child's in the right seat for their age and size, visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Show them you love them. Keep them safe. Visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
This is AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge, 435. First of all, in the weather, some rain for the rest of the afternoon and into the evening. Overnight, it'll be mostly cloudy, rain off and on. Low 44, still pretty cold. Tomorrow, sunny with a high of 60. On Wednesday, showers, thunderstorms, all that stuff with a high only in the 40s. On Thursday, a slight chance of rain, mostly cloudy with a high of 53. Friday, mostly sunny with a high of 63. Saturday, sunny, high 64. And on Sunday, mostly sunny with a high of 63 degrees. Right now, 59 degrees and overcast in Fort Dodge and at AM 1400 KVFD. Obituaries of this hour brought to you by Bruce's Funeral Home at 923 First Avenue South in Fort Dodge. You may contact the historic Bruce's Funeral Home by calling 515-576-5117 or online at www.brucesfuneralhome.com. Once again, we're sorry to report the death of Kenny Rash. Kenneth M. Rash has passed away. He died on May the 2nd, and his service was just the other day. Kenny Rash, well known to many people in our area. And again, if I were to try to give you Kenny Rash's life resume, we'd be here quite a while. A long life and a very, very productive life. Kenny Rash has passed away. And we're all a little bit less for it. Obituaries this hour brought to you by the historic Bruce's Funeral Home at 923 First Avenue South in Fort Dodge. You may contact the historic Bruce's Funeral Home by calling 515-576-5117 or online at www.brucesfuneralhome.com. This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge.
From the Fox Business Network on Wall Street, the major averages ending in the red, but well off session lows over renewed concerns over U.S.-China trade tensions, with the Dow falling 66 points, the Nasdaq down 41, S&P 500 down 13. And shares of Kraft Heinz rising today after the packaged food conglomerate said it will restate 3 years' worth of earnings after an investigation found misconduct among employees working in its procurement division, but not the senior management team. And thanks to an overwhelming social media response, due in part from a nudge from Chance the Rapper, Wendy's will bring back its spicy chicken nuggets nationwide. On Saturday, Wendy's tweeted that if fans generated 2 million likes for spicy chicken nuggets, they would return. Chance the Rapper, with more than 8 million Twitter followers, evidently stoked the response, and by late Sunday, the likes surpassed 2 million and the spicy chicken nuggets will be returning. With the Fox Business Report, I'm Hillary Barsky.
Hey, my friend's retail store was the victim of IoT password theft.
Yep. Cyber criminals are taking over security cameras, payment systems, and other IoT devices by exploiting vulnerabilities.
What if they target us and our dispersed network?
We're secured with Barracuda. We have advanced firewalls for our sites, enhanced security for our cloud infrastructure, and total email protection.
Such a relief.
Protect your business at Barracuda.com. Barracuda, your journey secured.
Sounds like you've got the crud. Cough, fever, sinus pressure, body aches. What should you take? Which over-the-counter medicine is best? You sure don't know, but the people at Daniel Pharmacy do. The pharmacists and technicians at Daniel Pharmacy are ready to help. They drop what they're doing, ask you what you're looking for, go down the aisle with you, and help you find the best medication for your symptoms. Daniel Pharmacy, caring for you and about you for over 50 years at 1114 Central Avenue, downtown Fort Dodge.
Hi, this is Amber at First State Bank. Are you currently enrolled in online banking? If so, are you taking advantage of e-statements? For a limited time, First State Bank will pay you $10 per account that you enroll in e-statements. You will receive the same information as your paper statement, but with the convenience of electronic access and the security of viewing in online banking. Must have a qualifying account at First State Bank. Terms and conditions apply. Visit fsbwc.com or stop in to one of our 7 convenient locations to learn more. First State Bank, first for you. Member FDIC.
Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services.
Oh, why not just cremate me when I'm gone?
Sounds simple, doesn't it? However, there are many options to consider when cremation is chosen. From simple to detailed, we at Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services can help you create a unique commemoration.
Gunderson Funeral Home and Cremation Services.
Divine Intervention is online at yourfortdodge.com, on Twitter at jmike1400.
This is AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. I'm Michael Devine, and we're here to tell the truth, make it matter, and we're never going to be boring. Joining me again today in that effort is Dr. Dean Stanzel, an economist with Southern Methodist University. How are you, Dean?
I'm doing great, Michael. How are you?
Dean Stanzel is also with the O'Neill Center. Please tell us about the O'Neill Center.
Sure. The O'Neill Center for Global Markets and Freedom is in the Cox Business School at Southern Methodist University in Dallas. It was set up by one of our alums, William O'Neill, who is also the founder of Investors Business Daily newspaper. Our focus is on studying the impact of competitive market forces on freedom and prosperity in the global economy. Our website is o'neillcenter.org, O-N-E-I-L.
Well, Dr. Stanzel, of course, usually sends me some information and material for us to speak about, and today he's hit a home run, at least in our part of the world. Dr. Stanzel, as a libertarian, of course, is very opposed to tariffs, and we've had a tariff situation here for quite some time. We were kind of told that, all right, we'll just flex our muscles and China will back down. Might be a little rough at first, but it'll get all worked out. Well, here we are in May. You know, that was last year when we started this, and apparently after telling us that the premier of China was going to be in our country for trade talks, over the weekend, President Trump called off the talks and vowed to continue the trade war, essentially. Now, President Trump, and this is in an NBC News article that's on my Facebook page sent to me by Dr. Stanzel, President Trump has asserted that the tariffs are helping our economy. But and while I'm no fan of NBC News, by the way, I consider them kind of the Pravda of the major 3 networks. President Trump doesn't help us and doesn't help himself when he says things like tariffs are boosting the economy, because they clearly aren't, especially not in our part of the world. But Dr. Stanzel, what about this? Trump and tariffs and boosting the economy?
Yeah, sure. I'm glad to hear you say that. The headline kind of says it all. Despite what Trump says, tariffs aren't boosting the American economy. And then they quote an economist saying his assertion generally that the Chinese are paying these tariffs is just simply nonsense. It's a complete misunderstanding of how tariffs work. And that's, I agree 100% with all of that. And most economists do. A tariff is a tax, right? So sure, it's imposed on the exporter of goods to our country, but it's just like the sales tax in the sense that while the retailer collects it, they get the money from the consumer. So these taxes on imported goods are being passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. And by the way, some of those consumers of imported goods are actually producers here in the U.S. with a global supply chain who are buying things from overseas to bring in to help to use to produce their final products, goods, and services. So this harms essentially everyone. All of us consume imported goods, and all of us, at some level, benefit from the production of domestic output. And this is certainly not helping the economy now, which is how he's asserting it's impacting us. One of his tweets was, "These payments are partially responsible for our great economic results." It's just a little bit of ignorance of basic economics.
Yeah, it doesn't help anybody, and I'm not trying to take off on President Trump. Again, I'm happy that he's president rather than whoever he ran against. But for God's sake,
who was that?
Who was that? Yeah, she whose name we will not speak. But why would he say such a thing? Tariffs. Well, I don't know. I'm going to rely on your expertise here, Dr. Stansel. Tariffs are poison in this part of the world. We're an agricultural state. 27% of our pork goes to China. A huge percentage of our soy. 1 in every 3rd row of soybeans is exported to China. We do a lot of business with Mexico, and that agreement has not come together yet. As a matter of fact, it's coming apart. The USMCA, the United States, Mexico, Canada agreement, is in trouble now. That doesn't do the Midwest in general, the Corn Belt, any good at all. I mean, it hurts us badly. Is there a part of the country that profits from this sort of thing?
No. I was just thinking of that as you were saying that. It's hard to imagine any industry or region that really is a net gainer from this. Now, certainly you can identify specific companies sometimes where, like with the steel tariffs a while back, Trump brought together all the big steel companies and the CEOs, and this is, made-for-TV event said, well, we need protection, and they got protection. So you could argue those particular companies maybe are getting some benefit, those with the political influence to get in there and have the president's ear. But there's so many producers who use steel who are now having to pay more or reshuffle their supply chain to figure out where to buy steel from someone else, and that's all passed on to consumers, right? We end up paying for this. The idea that somehow we're making the Chinese exporters pay for it is just, again, as the quote in the article said, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how tariffs work.
Yeah, and I don't know who's benefiting here. I haven't figured that out.
Well, I mean, you could say politically the president's benefiting, right? Because he has found a way to turn this issue into one that people are kind of on his side about. It's one of those things where economists have done a bad job educating the public, and it's an easy one to kind of demagogue with kind of 30-second sound bites, and it's a little harder to make the case for free trade in that context, unfortunately. So we need to do better. But ultimately, I think politically, it makes it seem. I suppose this is part of the argument. It makes it seem like he's standing up for the American worker or something, or the American companies. I can't articulate the case since I don't agree with it.
I understand. Well, you got to be careful with that. You can't sum up the world's problems in 30-second sound bites there, Dean. That's what I do for a living, for God's sake.
Well, but you have the liberty to go a little bit beyond 30 seconds.
I do. I can go all afternoon if I want to.
Right. So anyway, what the news item here is that essentially the 10% tariff that was levied on about $200 billion worth of Chinese imports, the latest messages from the president yesterday would be that we're going to raise that to 25%, so more than double it, and that he was going to impose that 25% tariff on other goods that didn't have it yet. And so, as you stated at the outset, this is kind of all in the run up to what were supposed to be trade talks. And the last I checked, the Chinese negotiators were still planning to come to the U.S. for these trade talks. So, thinking about the president's track record here, it seems like this is posturing. This is negotiating. This is the way he operates with things like this. This is a negotiating ploy to try to get them. Hopefully, that's all it ends up, to try to get them to make more concessions. And so, if it's only that and it doesn't get imposed, then maybe you could argue there's something good that comes out of it in terms of bringing down barriers to trade. Because no doubt, look, the Chinese have barriers to trade. They definitely do. All countries do. There aren't really any that don't. But we'd all be better off if we could lower those. And if rattling your saber or whatever you want to call it gets them to lower their barriers, and we do the same, then we'll all be better off in the end.
Yeah, I'm not getting this at all. I really got to tell you.
Oh, you're not getting what?
I'm getting what you're saying.
Okay, right.
I'm not getting the reasoning behind President Trump's actions.
Right. And all I'm saying is, if you kind of look at how he operates, this seems like standard operating procedure. Just tweet a bunch of kind of things that get people upset, and then watch the markets fall apart.
Yeah, that's what happened this morning, by the way.
Right. By the way, though, if you think about what's going on in the stock market, I mean, we, as I probably say a lot on this show, we pay too much attention to these fluctuations in all sorts of things, stock markets, unemployment reports, all these things. But ultimately, before today, the markets were up about 14% on the year. So just since January, we're not even halfway through the year, and you've already got about a 14% return. That's an excellent annual return. That's really a good return for maybe 3 years, right, on an investment, maybe 2 or 3 years. So we're way ahead, and even with a big correction, investors aren't, we don't need people, jumping out of windows or anything. It's not that sort of thing, but it really goes to show you, because it's not just the U.S. markets, it's the world market, stock markets all over the globe. It goes to show you how interconnected we are now. And so when something goes wrong in one country, it spills over to other countries, and certainly the Chinese economy isn't doing great. And so anything like this that would do harm would lead to concerns there. So it's all interconnected, but hopefully we can work our way through this without people losing out too much.
This is AM 1400 KVFT, the voice of Fort Dodge. Our guest is Dr. Dean Stansel, an economist with Southern Methodist University and the O'Neill Center. We're going to switch gears to another article also on my Facebook page, this time from National Public Radio. Now, this article has the distinction of being the first and perhaps only article from National Public Radio I will ever put on my Facebook page.
I thought you'd like that.
Yeah, because I have spoken of National Public Radio before as an extravagance that we should, get rid of. I don't know why we're putting money into National Public Radio, but I guess we are.
Sure. No, I totally agree that we shouldn't be funding us with taxpayer dollars, but I do think that sometimes their coverage, especially the expansive nature of it, does a good job of covering issues in a way, a more comprehensive way than some of the other sources do. So.
Well, perhaps that's true. I think they're just a pack of liberals with nowhere else to work.
Well, but
who couldn't work in the
from the others how?
What's that?
That's different from the other sources how?
That's a good point. That's a good point. Anyway, President Trump in this, if you read the NBC article that Dr. Sands and I have been talking about, you'll see that there is a mention of the overall improvement in our economy, but that's certainly not related to tariffs. That's related to other things that President Trump has done. And of course, deregulation kind of turns Dr. Stansel on too. It's close to his heart very much. And there is an article on my Facebook page from National Public Radio that talks about this a little bit, that the economy has definitely picked up steam in the first quarter, growing at an annual 3.2% rate. And that's very good. And retailers saw a strong sales increase in March after kind of a slow February. So check out that article. Well, what can we say about the economy in general being strong, Dean?
Sure. So as you summarized there, the numbers look pretty good. The most recent thing was on Friday of last week, the monthly jobs report. This one for April came out. The unemployment rate was down to 3.6%, the lowest in 50 years. Now, part of what was going on here, and this happens periodically, is that, although not lately, is that the labor force participation rate fell by about 500,000 people. In other words, 500,000 people left the workforce, and that automatically pushes the unemployment rate down. But lately we had been going the opposite direction. And part of it is that the labor market is tight, and some people maybe are just giving up. But But ultimately, unemployment is about as low as you can expect it to be, which means the notion in economics of full employment means you're employing as much of the workforce as wants to work almost, right? You're never going to get to zero unemployment. So the numbers look pretty good. Could always be better, but ultimately things are going in the right direction. The other thing to add in here is that we are coming up on, I think it's 2 more months, on 10 years in terms of the length of the current economic expansion. In other words, the amount of time that's passed since the last recession. It's coming up on 10 years here in a few months, and that would be the longest in 50 years. So what that means in part to me, and I know I've said this before and haven't been right yet, but is that around the corner somewhere, I guarantee you, there's a recession, right? Because the business cycle is a living thing in a sense, and at some point things are going to turn sour, and so a 10-year expansion is really about as long as you can hope for, and so we'll see, and that's where these trade war things and these kind of negative impacts on the economy become all that much more important, because the deregulation is helping make it easier for entrepreneurs to expand their businesses and lower their costs, and the tax cuts have helped with that as well. But the trade stuff essentially offsets that. In fact, there was a thing we probably talked about last fall, but someone put together some numbers looking at the costs, kind of the cost of these tariffs, and it had added up to being a larger burden for the economy than all the taxes associated with Obamacare combined. And it was also almost equal to the reduction in revenue from the income tax, from the corporate income tax cut. So it's not small potatoes here we're talking about with these tariffs, and the economy's humming, but we can always do better. I don't know if you heard this quote the other day. Vice President Pence came out and said that what we need to do right now is, because the economy is doing so well, he says this is the perfect time. I don't have the direct quote. It's the perfect time to lower interest rates, right? Which is the exact opposite of what you learn in an economics class, which is that if you want to use monetary policy, it's kind of counter-cyclical to help stimulate the economy, well, you lower interest rates when the economy is doing badly to help stimulate growth, and then when the economy's humming along, that's when you would raise them. And you make no mistake, we kept interest rates essentially at zero for a long time after the last kind of housing crisis. So,
there is mention
backwards, but what are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, and I want to ask you about that because in this NPR article, which is again on my Facebook page, and that's at AM 1400 KVFT, President Trump is pressuring the Federal Reserve to lower the interest rates by a full point. He says the U.S. economy would take off like a rocket, that sort of thing. The Fed did not lower them by a full point. They just didn't raise them, but the question I have is, certainly it makes sense to lower interest rates when times are bad. But when the economy is moving right along, what would be wrong with lowering interest rates?
So the concern that some people have is they use the term overheating, which I don't think I've ever seen that in a textbook, but it's basically like an engine in a car, right? If you get too much power in there, it overheats and can damage, and obviously that's kind of probably a poor metaphor for the economy. But the main concern is inflationary pressures. That if you have lower interest rates, that would expand the money supply, and then you would have more dollars chasing the same amount of goods, and so the prices would have to go up, and so the Fed traditionally has been thought of as doing this balancing act between inflation and unemployment. Now there's controversy in the profession as to whether or not that relationship there actually exists, but that's the way it has typically been thought of, and so since unemployment is low, you want to make sure that the inflation doesn't get too high, and it hasn't been high. Inflation's been quite low lately. So my view is that we shouldn't have a Fed. I think that what we should do, in fact, Milton Friedman's idea.
You're just getting more radical as time goes on.
Milton Friedman's idea was a constant growth rate of the money supply, which is essentially what the Fed controls, is the money supply. And so it's not that we shouldn't ever let it grow, although I'd be okay with that. It's that to take out the uncertainty and the problems it creates for investors. Pick a number, whatever it is, 1%, 2%, and the money supply grows by that rate every year. Everyone knows what it's going to be. There's no confusion. There's no uncertainty. And then you don't need a Fed, right? It's basically running on autopilot. But not everyone agrees with that.
I'm going to start calling you Milton one of these days. But I tell you, you do have me watching Milton Friedman videos on YouTube, which is.
Have you ever watched his Free to Choose?
Yes.
Series?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
It's old, but it's good.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Friedman's been gone for a while, hasn't he?
That is true. That is true. Yes.
But he is the founder of libertarian thought in the late in the 20th century and 21st century.
Well,
Certainly.
he's one of them. Yeah, he's definitely my favorite. But
Yeah, well, he's perhaps the best known for someone like me and most of the audience who are not in your field.
Right. He was really good at popularizing and talking to regular people as opposed to just talking to other economists. And the whole Free to Choose series, that was like a PBS series running over. And he had a column in Time magazine, I think it was, or Newsweek for a long time. So, yeah, he was good at that.
Well, he appeared to be a philosopher while explaining these things, which is important. And he knew his audience. And he wasn't giving a lecture, so to speak.
Right.
He was explaining things in a way that, and it's a great gift and a great skill to be able to do that. I'm not, obviously I've had Dr. Stanzel on for a long time, so this excludes him, but a lot of academics are not good on the air. They're very well versed in their field, but they're so used to talking to each other that if they're on the air, you have to practically interpret what is being said.
Ooh, I love that house.
Yeah, but look whose sign is in the yard. That's not who we're working with.
We don't have to work with them just because they have it listed. Our agent at Neighborhood Realty can show us the house.
They can?
Well, sure, they can show us any house we like, no matter whose sign is in the yard.
Well, then let's call Neighborhood Realty for a tour.
I'm Stacy Weirda with Neighborhood Realty. We can put you in the home of your dreams no matter who it's listed with. Neighborhood Realty, online at neighborhood-realty.net.
Even in my own home, I had my own designated space to smoke. If I think about it, it really was like I was punishing myself. A friend of mine said, why wouldn't you just try the Juul? And so I went out and I bought one. The idea of going back to smoking, I couldn't even imagine doing that. I don't think anyone, including myself, thought that I could switch.
Carolyn made the switch October 2016. Make the switch at JUUL.com. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
From tuning an engine to replacing a fuse, you can learn it all under the hood. Heard every Saturday afternoon from 2 till 4 on the voice of Fort Dodge, AM 1400 KVFD.
The
Fort
top
Dodge.
Republican Doug Collins calls the contempt resolution disingenuous since negotiations about access to redacted information are continuing with the Justice Department.
Fox's Jared Halpern on Capitol Hill. The Justice Department proposing a meeting with the Judiciary Committee for Wednesday to reach an acceptable accommodation between Barr and the committee. Prison time for an Illinois man who plotted to kill hundreds of people at a Chicago bar in 2012. Fox's Colonel Scott has more live.
Lisa Adel Daoud got 16 years in prison for his plan to commit mass murder. The bomb he tried to set off was actually given to him by undercover federal agents who convinced him it was real. Daoud was arrested as he tried to detonate it. The judge at today's sentencing considered other acts, his slashing of a fellow inmate in prison and attempting to have an FBI agent killed. Prosecutors asked for 40 years, but the judge cited signs of mental illness for the reduced term. Daoud maintains his innocence even after submitting an Alford plea, which says that the charges against him were factual, Lisa.
Thanks, Grinnell. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer says the higher tariffs on China that President Trump threatened over the weekend will take place at 12:01 Eastern Time Friday. This is Fox News.
This is what Flo from Progressive sounds like in one of our many hilarious commercials.
Hi, did you know that you can get a quote on your motorcycle insurance in under 3 minutes at Progressive.com? And did you know that saying hi makes even bad news sound good? Hi, you have high cholesterol. Hi, you're fine.
And this is what that same commercial sounds like on your motorcycle.
Hi, there's no more tank.
Yeah, even our commercials sound better on the bike. And with basic policy starting at $75 a year, Progressive helps keep you on yours. Quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Annual premium for basic liability policy not available in all states.
Guardians of the Grass, run with us on a John Deere X300 Select Series lawn tractor built for versatility. Because when you take pride in your lawn, you do it all. You mulch, bag, haul, grow, mow, and a whole lot more. And that's why the X300 Series takes care of everything with attachments for all your spring and summer projects. Because you're not just doing yard work, you're creating common ground for the whole neighborhood to enjoy. Nothing runs like a Deere. Run with us. Search John Deere X300 for more.
Russian media quoting the pilot of the airliner that burst into flames during an emergency landing in Moscow was saying the plane was without radio communications because of a lightning strike. With Florida passing a statewide law banning so-called sanctuary cities and commanding law enforcement to assist federal authorities pursuing illegal immigrants, a number of county sheriffs in the state are now participating in a program to streamline federal detention orders for arrested persons.
Several county sheriffs in Florida will allow deputies to serve federal immigration warrants to any arrested persons also wanted by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It is not a pass for deputies to round up suspected illegals.
For this to apply to you, you have to go out and commit a burglary, commit a robbery.
Your news, your town, your station. KVFD News when it breaks.
Good afternoon. I'm Alex Benzagal with the KVFD Afternoon News. 3 people were killed, including 2 children, in a crash on Interstate 80 just west of Coralville on Sunday afternoon. Radio Hour's Matt Kelly reports.
The State Patrol says an SUV was trying to make an illegal U-turn and had slowed in the right lane of the interstate. As the SUV approached the crossover in the median, it pulled into the left lane, directly into the path of the oncoming semi. Troopers say the truck broadsided the SUV and sent it into the median. Reports say 5 people were in the SUV and 3 of them died, including children ages 11 and 13. Another child and adult survived. They're hospitalized in Iowa City. No names or conditions are being released. Radio Iowa, I'm Matt